All right, and we're live. Just wanted to give everything time to sync up before I uh opened up the mic, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, we're live. It's 5 my time anyway, and we're going to take a look at the rather legendary yet still oddly obscure, not just one, not just two, but three-part debate series between Ken Hovind and King Crocoduck. Now, we're going to start with just the first part, of course, because you got to start at the beginning. And, obviously, I want to do this over a span of time rather than just have some 6 or 7 hour long stream like some people like to do. So, much like the R and Raw discussion from Non Sequitur Show, we're watching this not for 0645 2017. Oh no. Sorry, I had my traditional yawn there. We are watching this for the incredible way, not just that King Crocoduck handles himself with regards to Kent, but just the incredible information and way he describes things. This is probably, honestly, my personal favorite set of quote unquote debates with Kent. I say calling any of it a debate is honoring it too much. Um, but it's because it focuses on cosmology and concepts that are just completely outside of Kent Hovind's realm, which actually makes a pretty nice follow-up to me having covered his recent Whack an Atheist on Stephen Hawking earlier, which, again, was a demonstration that Kent doesn't even begin to understand the kinds of theoretical physics that are involved in discussions of the origin of the universe, the nature of stars, the nature of, you know, grand cosmology. So, that being said, now that I've gone through enough preamble and we got a few people in, because you always got to make sure you get some people in to enjoy these things, we are going to fire away. And yes, this dates back to the era when everyone was doing all their things in Google Hangouts and Hangouts on Air. So, expect literal slideshow. Expect moderate audio quality and just. Sorry, Dion again. It doesn't feel like it was forever ago, but it feels like it was forever ago. It's really weird going back to even videos that aren't 10 years old and thinking, man, this feels like an eternity. But let's get to it.
Okay, everybody, we are live. Hey, it is Friday. What is it? June 16th. I have about, what time is it? Anyways, it is noon my time, and we have a very special event for you guys today. We have Mr. Ken Ho.
Speaking of noon my time, it was about 1:30 that Deviant Outcast decided to post these messages in the in the stream chat, so you can actually see them up there. And they've been sitting there for like 3.5 hours. It's pretty great, lover style.
Hovind, and oh, hang on, I just didn't know. I thought I turned that off, but we have Ken Hovind here with King Crocoduck, and they're going to have a little debate on some of the merits of evolution versus creationism, I believe, is the topic. I am just hosting this. I will moderate if needs be. I will time check if needs be, but basically this is going to be between both of them. I do want them to introduce themselves a little bit, so if you're not familiar who they are, they can tell you all about themselves in a few minutes, and then I think they have some opening statements prepared, and then we get right into the actual debate itself. So Ken, I'm going to let you go first. You want to tell a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll go to Casey.
Well, sure. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I object to your description of it being evolution versus creationism. I think it's evolutionism versus creation. The ism.
Can you hear the energy in his voice through all the reverb and echo? This is back before he became bitter. He was out of prison for like about a year at this point. So this is before he had truly realized he was just nothing at this stage. That the 9 years in jail had basically ruined him. It's surprising. I'm surprised that it took him that long to realize he was pretty much irrelevant. But yeah, apparently it took him that long. So if you find the early stuff from, 20 late after 2016, 2017, early 2018, before he got into direct discussions with our friend Mr. Nelson. That's when he became very, very bitter. A couple of divorces and getting completely owned by people, realizing you left prison in a whole different world from the one you went in. That'll do that to a person.
Some should go on evolution, but aside from that minor detail, let's see. I was a high school science teacher, science and math for 15 years. Moved to Pensacola in January of '89, and soon thereafter began a ministry titled Creation Science Evangelism. I believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. The earth is about 6,000 years old. God made it in 6 days. That's the only way things work with so many millions of symbiotic relationships. And as far as we got history, we can talk about the age of the earth later. But I defend the position that the earth, the Bible story of creation is correct, and the flood story is correct as written. And there's going to be a coming judgment one day, and we're all going to stand before the creator of the universe, and you better get ready for that day. So that's my position.
Okay.
You can believe that all you want, but unless you have proof, shut up. Howard, got him.
Thank you, Kent. And what about you, Casey? You want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself as well?
Well, I'm a researcher right now in computational biophysics. I got my degree from UC Santa Barbara. I have research experience in astrophysics. I dabbled a little bit in quantum field theory, but right now it's basically biophysics, a little bit of...
Okay, let's look at that for a second, or think about that for a second. This man just said, I dabbled a little in quantum field theory. Like you just decide to try out a different hobby. Well, I dabbled a little in Dungeons and Dragons, but wasn't quite for me. Quantum field theory. I mean, we're talking a person on a whole other level of understanding the math and the physics at an intimate level. And Ken Hovind is going into this thinking he has anything. I wish I could be half as knowledgeable on these subjects as Casey is. And I'm trying, but it's really hard stuff. Oh, this is so beautiful.
Medical physics and integrating a little bit of nuclear physics in there as well. I'll go more into detail about my actual position during the opening statement, but basically, I'm generally in agreement with the majority of the scientific community when it comes to issues like the age of the universe. I take it to be 13.8 approximately billion years old, and I do not accept the creation myth as believed by my opponent.
Okay. Do you care who has the first opening statement?
I didn't go first. If it doesn't matter, I'd like to hear what he has to say first.
You or me?
Go ahead. No,
Go ahead, Casey.
Okay.
I believe that you want first. Go
All
ahead.
right, then. I guess.
I'll give you him the same amount of time you have. So.
All right, then. Though my training has been in physics, and though I've come to this debate with the understanding that the matters being discussed will exclusively pertain to the physical rather than biological sciences, I'd like to open with a little bit of philosophy of science.
Make note of that the understanding was that this would pertain to physical sciences rather than biological sciences.
Mr. Hovind and I are in serious disagreement over the circumstances of the universe's development, and though I labor under no delusions that I will manage to convince him to change his mind, I've come here today to demonstrate before a live audience that Mr. Hovind's entire worldview is at variance with the very fundamentals of science. That is not merely to say that my opponent misunderstands the rudimentaries of the theories that he denies, which is patently obvious to those of us who work in the relevant fields. I am making the much stronger claim that Mr. Hovind does not understand the nature of scientific discovery, or how theories are developed and selected, or how the scientific enterprise as a whole functions. And so I'd like to open with an observation that may at first appear to be trivial. That is, that the most remarkable thing about science is that it works. It consistently produces reliable results that have revolutionized our species in a way that no other way of thinking ever has. 1,000 years ago, humanity's capacity to communicate was limited by the amount of parchment that your bird could carry, and by the distance that it could travel. Now we can instantly send terabytes of information to people on the opposite side of the world via invisible beams of light. 1,000 years ago, we envied those birds and their seemingly limitless freedom to explore the world and reach places that we couldn't. Now we pity them for being constrained to a fraction of the heights that we've reached. 1,000 years ago, we sacrificed those birds and inhaled their sacred fumes in order to fend off the demons who we believed were responsible for the plagues that nearly wiped us out time and time again. Now we are the predators of the microscopic organisms whose devastating effects we once attributed to the supernatural. Science works. Hate the method for being so rigorous, hate the conclusions for not conforming to your expectations, but do not deny its power. Science is not perfect. It's a self-correcting enterprise, but it is ruled by some of the most rigorous standards possible. There is simply no other method of inquiry that can compete with science when the goal is to construct accurate models of reality. The method that has allowed you to watch this debate and hear my voice is the same method that has been used to construct the theories that creationists deny. That these other theories haven't had as much of an impact on our day-to-day activities as, say, quantum theory and germ theory have is irrelevant. The strength of a scientific theory is determined by how consistent it is with reality, and this consistency can be measured in terms of how well the theory fits with current data, and especially how accurately it predicts future data. That is the central point that I wish to make in this opening, for creationists, and indeed all pseudoscientists, will attempt to subvert the scientific principles that they reject by ignoring this essential fact. It is extremely important to always keep in mind the importance of predictive accuracy and potential falsifiability, because this is how we distinguish science from pseudoscience. If a model makes testable, potentially falsifiable predictions with parsimonious explanatory power, then it may be worth your consideration. If all that a model has, however, is ad hoc speculation that incorporates selective data mining and unfalsifiable remedies to fundamental problems, then what you're dealing with is a perversion of the scientific method. I put it to you that my opponent and his contemporaries indulge in the latter while attacking the former, and that they do this out of the misguided belief that science operates in a manner akin to a court of law. Mr. Hovind has made comparisons of this sort on a number of occasions, and he epitomizes this sentiment when he makes the claim that creationists and so-called evolutionists are all looking at the same evidence, but are led to interpret it differently because of their philosophical predispositions. Unbeknownst to him, however, this is effectively an open admission that he is engaging in pseudoscience. He does this so that he can put the disciplines that he tolerates and the disciplines that he does not on a level playing field in order to gain a tactical advantage during a discussion. A person who knows how to navigate the arena of public discourse can make a seemingly powerful case to the uninformed, even if this person knows almost nothing about the topic under discussion. This is what lawyers get paid to do. Their job is not to try to determine the reality of a situation, but to present a convincing case. A prosecutor and a public defender can look at an identical set of evidence for a given case, but the arguments that they present will be diametrically opposed because they have been assigned their conclusions from the outset. Suppose a suspect is put on trial in a criminal court. In principle, two lawyers could enter the room and flip a coin to decide who defends and who prosecutes. It does not matter to either of them whether the defendant is actually guilty or not. What matters is whether they can convince the judge of their a priori conclusion. Even if a lawyer doesn't mentally accept the position that they represent, there is nothing that can stop them from nevertheless presenting their case, if they so choose. Scientists, on the other hand, cannot operate like this. A scientist cannot flip a coin to choose which side of an academic issue they accept. Where the lawyer is assigned a position and uses the evidence to synthesize a model that defends that position, a scientist's judgment must remain unimpeded. All available evidence is interpreted within the appropriate context, meaning that no extraneous, unfalsifiable assumptions need to be made, and that evidence is synthesized into a model with predictive capabilities. There are no a priori conclusions in science. Maxwell didn't assume the equations of electromagnetism, he derived them to correspond to observation. Einstein didn't assume that time slows down for objects in relative motion. He calculated this result as being a natural consequence of the invariance of light speed. Physicists didn't assume that the Higgs boson would have the specific properties that it did. They calculated those properties, its spin, its charge, its threshold energy, and so on, decades before by studying the properties of symmetry breaking. Where a good scientist will suspend judgment until they have a reliable model of a phenomenon, creationists openly admit that they do the exact opposite. They begin with their conclusion and selectively piece together whatever evidence helped them construct a convincing narrative of events. This often involves distorting key facts and always involves the omission of contradictory evidence. Creationists feel justified in doing this because they project this behavior onto their opponents, asserting that everyone's presuppositions will determine their worldview. But scientists don't interpret evidence in a manner that fits an a priori conclusion, and this is what separates them from lawyers. By arguing that creationists and so-called evolutionists are looking at the same evidence but interpreting it differently, and that both positions consequently deserve equal consideration, those who hold to the same evidence, different interpretations paradigm are unwittingly admitting that they are being lawyers and not scientists. So how are we to distinguish, then, between two competing models of reality? How are we to decide which theory ought to be discarded and which ought to be provisionally accepted as the best model in the light of the available data? The answer, as I've indicated, lies in the properties of the theory itself. It must make testable predictions that are independently verifiable, potentially falsifiable, and parsimonious. To say that a theory is not parsimonious is to say that it contains extraneous elements that compromise the model's explanatory efficiency by incorporating components that limit the scope of its predictive power. And to say that a theory is not independently verifiable and falsifiable is to consign it immediately, in the Popperian sense, to the catalog of pseudoscience. It is my position that Big Bang cosmology, stellar evolution, radiometric dating, and a whole host of other principles at the center of astrophysics, nuclear physics, geophysics, and mechanics are all situated within theoretical frameworks that not only meet the criteria for scientific rigor, but have enjoyed tremendous success with regard to the prediction of future data. Because ultimately, this is what it comes down to. The scientific near consensus about these matters is valid because mountains of data have been accurately predicted, often decades in advance, by the very models which Mr. Hovind would have us believe do not work. The models may not be perfect. None are, as science makes no pretensions to perfection, as it is driven by the pursuit of explanations of inconsistencies and ambiguities. But the models nonetheless work, as evidenced by their stunning predictive capabilities. I will show you today that they do indeed work, and that my opponent's models are at best ad hoc rationalizations of pre-existing knowledge or vaguely worded text, and at worst, indications of a disturbingly superficial grasp of the concepts on which he pontificates. The laundry list of arguments against the models that you have set yourself against does not constitute an understanding of the scientific theories that you deny. And worse, because scientific theories are effectively entire networks of interrelated observations, laws, predictions, and principles, it is impossible to do what Mr. Hovind does without serious consequences. There are consequences to picking and choosing, cafeteria style, the kinds of science that one is willing to accept. I will show you today that the consequences of denying the constancy of the speed of light, of denying the validity and temporal uniformity of radiometric dating, or of denying any number of other fundamental principles in science, results in models of the universe that are patently absurd, even to a creationist. Whatever our disagreements, Mr. Hovind, we at least agree that we're not being inundated with lethal doses of radiation from quickly decaying isotopes in the Earth. We at least agree that the sun exists, having successfully met the conditions necessary to engage in fusion at the core. We at least agree that the universe is not an endless sea of particles haphazardly floating about. But these are the kinds of consequences that would follow from the rejection of the scientific principles which stand in the way of a 6,000-year-old universe, and I will elaborate on them if and when they come up. What makes science, including the scientific models that creationists deny, so unique is that they are capable of making independently verifiable, potentially falsifiable predictions, whereas all that creationist models are capable of doing is providing a potential explanation, constructed ad hoc, for already existing data. Anyone can do the latter with any preconceived conclusion and a selective set of evidence, but only scientists can do the former. Any and all creationist claims will, without exception, fall at least into one of the following categories. It will be based on a misunderstanding or misrepresentation of the scientific enterprise or any relevant scientific principles. It will be based on an unreasonable or inconsistent standard of evidence. It will contain vague terminology that allows for equivocation and goalpost shifting. Or if we're fortunate enough to be dealing with an honest creationist, it will be an acknowledgement that a belief in creationism is dogmatic rather than evidentiary, and therefore can never under any circumstances be changed because contradictory evidence will be arbitrarily discredited or ignored. Before I close, I would like to make a prediction for this debate. I predict that whenever I corner Mr. Hovind on any matter, demonstrating how the rejection of a particular phenomenon results in the vision of the universe that is patently absurd, my opponent will claim, without evidentiary justification, that the variables under discussion or the principles being rejected used to be different, that the laws of physics, for whatever reason, changed over time in such a manner as to make the universe appear to be billions of years old rather than thousands. I'm going to give this retreat into unfalsifiable omphalism a name. In honor of my opponent, I shall name this practice Hovinding, and I will point it out as we go along. Creationism by any reasonable metric is pseudoscience, and I intend to demonstrate that for all of you today.
That, I forgot how long it was, but I just wanted to let it run because, my God, that was incredible. Let's just take that all in. Starting And really the core of the entire thing was simply that science works. And as we've all said in regards to Hovind, is he's taking advantage of the very same methodology every time he does his stupid videos. He's using technology produced by the same methodologies that also demonstrate everything we know about the universe. But the moment any of those facts that are discovered through these methodologies conflict with what Hovind believes in his magic book of garbage, that's suddenly wrong, just arbitrarily. And something you may have noticed that'll be a slightly recurring thing, I think, through all three of these is random people popping in down there just out of the blue. We had some Luke person in there. I say we like this didn't happen, back in 2017. People just come out of nowhere and just join in. It's kind of funny, and eventually Steve brings it up. Kent's brain must have been close to flatlining trying to comprehend all that. I mean, it just, so good. So good. And not to spoil it for you if you haven't seen this, but his prediction on what Hovind does is precisely what Hovind does. Because Hovind is as predictable as the freaking sunrise. You know what this means? We're going to have to hear Kent speak. Also, I really wish this man ever in his life would learn how to mute something, because the constant feedback coming from his end, sometimes you see his face pop up, and that's because, Google system was like, oh, this person's talking now, so I need to prioritize them. And it's like, dude, mute your freaking microphone. Come on. Or wear headphones. It took you till like this past year to learn what headphones are. Yeah. Incompetent. But remember, he's a genius.
Okay, thank you. So you're about 15 minutes, including that little disconnect that you had. Ken, take as long as you want your opening statement. I know you wanted to address certain points, obviously, specifically. You had mentioned to me when Casey was offline. Go ahead and do your opener first, and then you go ahead and address things specifically, because he did have a 15-minute long opener. Is that fair?
Oh, sure. Whatever time you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Very easy to please.
God, after hearing, Steve's mic and Casey's mics are solid, then you hit Kent's audio, and it's just like he's shouting into a freaking toilet. Come to Creation Science Evangelism, operating out of the, not even the master, the secondary bathroom at my sister's house, because I got kicked out of my own. Hovind, I'm divorced. Hovind, my son stole my house. Hovind, I'm going to cry in the corner now. Hovind.
Well, thank you. He said, as I mentioned to you when he was off air, maybe he couldn't hear us. I think we certainly, with this important of a topic, need to take it one slice at a time, one sentence at a time, maybe, or sometimes one word at a time, but certainly one thought at a time. In his opening, he probably brought up 50 or 60 different topics. I'd like to respond to each one of them.
One topic at a time. One topic at a time, Hovind. I'm going to bring up 6 kinds of evolution and six religions, but one topic at a time, Hovind.
But obviously, I can't write that fast, for one, to get them all down. But I'll be glad to respond to any of them that he would like. Now, I take the position that the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God made the world in 6 literal days about 6,000 years ago.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your brain on religion. Any questions?
Now, as far as where God came from, that I cannot answer. Just like I doubt Casey can answer where the matter came from, or the energy came from, or the laws came from that run this universe. Where did these laws come from? To say it's inherent in the matter just begs the question: where did the matter come from, or energy, or information? But that's another story. But I don't. We both have an a priori assumption of something, starting with something. I start with God, and I take the position that God is outside of time, space, matter. Like he says he is. He told Moses, you tell Pharaoh, I am sent you. God is not, this is not 2017 in heaven. God has already been to your funeral, Casey. He's not limited by time at all. He sees it all at the same time. Now, you have an option of what you want to do with your life, and you can choose anything you want, and so do I, so does everybody. But I would encourage you to really think this through, because you're going to be dead for an extremely long time. And if I'm right, I would suspect you're in serious trouble. You said about the strength of a theory is that it depicts reality, and it predicts.
Mark, I did a short video on that one, and there was no meat on that bone whatsoever. It was pathetic. He just weaseled his way out. Um, he said something in there that I forget the exact context of where he applied it, but his concept was something being applied to the concept of God created a quote limited God, and he believed in an unlimited God, which means that any proposition we bring up to him about his deity must be something that that deity can do, such as forgive everybody without a requirement of faith, for example, um, because to say they can't would create a limited God. So Hovind wrapped himself into worked himself into a corner with that one, and if I ever do talk to him again, I'm going to bring that up where appropriate.
Makes predictions, and it's falsifiable, and it's independently verifiable. I like all that. Believe me, I like all that. So I'm going to make a prediction, and I want you to falsify it. I predict that since the Bible says the animals
Dogs will produce dogs.
and plants will bring forth after their kind, I predict that every farmer in the planet, every farmer in history and alive today, will be able to count on crossbreeding his plants or animals and getting the same kind of offspring. The ducks will produce.
Anyone notice what he just said? Crossbreeding his plants and animals and they'll produce the same kind of offspring. You kind of mix things up there, Kent. What you said was wrong. This man literally just said, if you specify things, get a carrot and a pig to breed. Crossbreed your plants and animals. That is how the English works. I'm no expert on the language. It's a bastard language, honestly, but I've spoken it my whole life. I have better comprehension than Kent does, so I think I know what he just said. That's what you got to do. Pay attention to little things, and you'll be surprised at all the stuff you pick up. And this is pre-stroke, going senile, pre-angry Kent. This is still I'm out of prison, but I'm still not angry at the world, Kent.
Ducks, the cows will produce cows, and the corn will produce corn. That's my theory, that they will bring forth after their kind. And now the word kind, apparently in the Bible, is tied to the bringing forth. A horse and a zebra can bring forth offspring. A horse and a banana cannot. A horse and a duck cannot. Now, exactly where the line is on all of those.
Yeah, Brock, that's the thing about Kent and his followers. They are just plain rude. If you are nice to them because of the perspective you're coming from, they will still be hostile to you, but then get offended when you return the favor. So there's no use in being nice to Kent Hovind or anyone directly associated with him, unless you find a personal reason to. But as a general policy, it's best to just presume the worst because they're going to give it to you.
Those divisions of what a kind is, I'm not sure. I don't think anybody is sure. That would be a good field of research for science to get involved in. But I think a 5-year-old can tell you that a horse and an elephant are not the same kind.
Braden, this was back in 2017, and there are 3 of these between Kent and King Crocoduck. So stick around. We're not going to go through all of them tonight, but I am going to do live streams of all 3 of them. So this is going to be fun.
Now, it could be that the Asian elephant and the Indian elephant, Asian and African elephant cannot interbreed. I understand it's been done once and the baby died, but they did bring forth. So I think a 5-year-old would tell you that the Asian elephant and the African elephant are probably the same kind.
Brock, they're also very intolerant of anyone who is neurologically atypical. So the moment you show anything that seems weird to them, they're going to latch onto it. They can't appreciate the individuality and beauty of every person, one way or another. The stuff that makes all of us special. Nope. If you're not exactly like them, little clone army, they just don't get me started.
Kind of animal as opposed to an elephant and a hamster. So I predict, and I'd like you to falsify it if you can. I think my theory is reasonable. It depicts reality, and it should be falsifiable. Okay, get something to bring forth something that's not the same kind. Let's have dogs produce something non-dog, or cows produce something that is non-cow, or pine trees produce something that is non-pine tree. You can do it in botany or in biology, whichever you like, in husbandry. That's my prediction. I think it's held true. All of science, all of history has demonstrated the Bible is exactly correct.
Oh yeah, Mark. He can never just let you make a point regardless of what, I don't want to say relevance it has to the discussion. Not that you bringing that up doesn't imply that you have some experience in the church, clearly, because he also thinks every single atheist, every person who believes in evolutionism, it just has no idea about anything with religion. Religion being his, our proper religion. But yeah, his sexism just knows no bounds. That a woman cannot lead from his perspective, because this is extreme fundamentalism. Sickening stuff, really. If just for that.
The animals and plants bring forth after their kind. And then that appears 10 times in the first chapter of the Bible.
Brock, you're just a little eccentric. Our favorite kind of eccentric. That's the way I'll phrase it, my friend. Because I don't say it like it's a bad thing at all. You're amped up every time we hang out and chat, every time we see on a stream or something, and it's cool. It's you being you. And I wish to encourage you being you. What I don't want to encourage is people to be like Kent, which is why we do these videos. Don't follow him. Don't listen to what he has to say. It will lead you down a path of nothing but destruction and sadness. Or if you can pull off the grift, money.
In the flood story, chapter 6 and 7, it appears 10 more times. God told Noah to bring the animals onto the ark after their kind, after their sort.
Exactly, Toby. And if Kent and his followers are like that on camera, imagine how bad they are off camera. They cannot be good people for the most part. Some of them might be, but those are probably the same people we don't hear. And you'll notice something. I was watching a lot of older content related to Kent today, because I just apparently wanted to torture myself all day for the hell of it. And actually I've been the past few days. And you'll notice more cases of people laughing and people being more involved in his stuff previously, but now it's almost kind of a sit down and shut up thing. And I don't know if that's partly due to them being in the Genesis Baptist Church building, so you don't hear them as well or not, but there seems to be less back and forth with everything and more of a sit down, shut up, and listen to me thing. So either the people have changed, or Kent has really cracked down on levels of joviality at Dinosaur Adventure Cult. I'm not sure.
Now, Charlie Darwin wrote a book, The Origin of Species. I don't think that's what the argument is about. There's many different species that are obviously the same kind of animal. I think there are 500 or 600 species of ladybugs now. It's a bug. It's recognizable as a ladybug. So they go by the number of spots, or how long their legs are, or how high they can sing in the shower. I don't know, but they're still a bug. And I think that the argument that the atheists and evolutionists are looking so...
Raise your hand if you've ever heard Kent Hovind say something stupid. And I guarantee every last one of us just raised our hand at once just because. Yeah, I've got to bring it up again because he does that every single time as if we can see the audience. And I get that it's a thing he's used to in presenting to a crowd where you try to get them involved in something. It's a little childish to do even then, though, but at least if you're talking in just a typical presentation, it makes sense. But when your primary focus should actually be the internet audience that you're trying to reach, you really should change your tactics. I've seen other places do it way better, so,
desperately for evidence of variation of species, which is not really the argument. They bring forth after their kind. So you said the strength of a theory is that it depicts reality. The evolution theory, if I understand it correctly, says animals are all related if we go back in time. So if you go back in time...
Kent, stop with the attempt to absurdify. I'm talking to him like this is a recent video. He really does need to stop with the attempt to absurdify the concept. Yeah, all life is evidently related and connected on the planet. All of it. Any little points you draw, yeah, technically if you go back far enough, we're related to this, that, the other, any kind of absurd combination you can make. Prove it wrong or shut up. That simple. Because the science is already set on that. You're way behind, but you want to keep up with the argument. That's cool, but put up or shut up, which is actually about to be a series I do on every tiny little argument he and other creationists make. I think it'll be nice to put out some quick videos that are just a put up or shut up case. First one on you came from a rock. Put up or shut up, Kent. But more on that in the near future.
Time, you think a crocodile and a duck are related, apparently, from your name, Crocoduck. Ultimately, and that is what the theory of evolution teaches. A crocodile and a duck are related. If you go back, I'll give you all the years you want. You can go back millions or billions or trillions or quadrillions of years. Do you believe a crocodile and a duck are related? And what is the evidence for that? Nobody has ever seen a
Those who don't raise their hands in Genesis Baptist Church are sent for judgment. I can just imagine it. You know the episode of King of the Hill where Peggy goes and teaches at that Catholic school, and she has the nightmare about sending the kids to hell? I just imagine that in the background, it opening up, and you got Hank back there. That's a clean burning hell, I tell you what. Propane. Oh, Hank would call Kent Hovind a jackass.
duck produce a non-duck or a crocodile produce a non-crocodile. You're living in dreamland.
And oh yeah, Deviant, that's what I was meaning. Like the people definitely have changed, but I mean, like even I don't think anyone's there from the original bunch that helped them set it up. But I don't know. I don't pay attention to the stuff that deep. Other people do that for me, and they do it better. But it's like even the kinds of people, the kinds of people have changed. And it just seems like it's a more bitter crowd that he's attracted. So I guess what they say is true about the whole you attract the energy you give or what have you. I guess sometimes they're not wrong.
But think it happened, you imagine it happened, but evolution is a religion that people believe in. It is not part of science. Real science is things we can observe, study, test, and demonstrate. And you're right. The theory should predict reality. The reality is cows produce cows and ducks produce ducks. That's the reality. And
I haven't seen the continental plates teleport, but okay. Our friend back there, where's our boy? Our friend Mark, who is secretly Kim Jong-un. His dad and his grandfather totally could warp. It's a Korean magic known as I'm gonna probably butcher the pronunciation some, but Cheksubo. Where you could move 1,000 ri in an instant, that being a unit of distance or something like that. Or maybe I'm getting that mixed up with. I know that 1,000 ri is important to the Cholema horse concept. 1,000 ri distance. Whatever case, there's literally a North Korean song called "General Uses Warp" that tells about how Kim Jong Il used to warp around Korea to handle situations where necessary, and that Kim Il-sung used to do it as well, but now he just lets Kim Jong-il do it. This is back in the early 90s, very late 80s, early 90s, back at a time when they were still trying to deify the North Korean leaders. They've since stepped away from that, so you don't hear magic stories about Kim Jong-un. So, I mean, all seriousness, at least we'll give Kim Jong-un that. He isn't trying to make himself seem like a literal god.
Every farmer in the world will tell you that's what they observe. And in the laboratory, they can try frantically to get variations beyond that, and they fail. They have worked for years to get wide range of variety of dogs, for instance. And we now have Chihuahuas to Great Danes. Okay, but they're still obviously dog. And it could be, as I've mentioned many times in my seminar,
Kiwi, yes, something to that effect. Or I think it was a duck that thought it was a turkey. It was one or the other, but yeah, the kind obviously did not know what kind it was going for at that point. Definitely didn't. Ban.
our dog, wolf, coyote probably had a common ancestor. I understand coyotes and wolves have been interbred. They don't like to and don't in nature, but they can. So the Bible definition of kind is having to do with bringing forth offspring.
Well, Kent loves it piled higher and deeper. Hovind. He enjoys intimate activities of a strange nature. Hovind.
Now, whether the offspring are viable or not, it doesn't say. For instance, the horse and the ass bring forth a mule, which is 99.99% of the time sterile. I've heard that 1 out of 20,000 is fertile. I don't know, it doesn't matter to me. The fact is, they're both four-legged animals, four-wheel drive, leather upholstery. They both look like a horse.
I get so tired of that joke. It's funny once. That's it. And only when someone with charisma delivers it, which Kent does not have. I brought up some nice music from the DPRK earlier. Not the greatest country on earth by a long shot. But they do make some really nice music, and I'd rather be listening to that than hearing Ken Hovind's horrible voice. But I'm committed to this because I love you. Not Kent. I mean, you in the audience and you watching this after the fact. Because y'all are just great. Let's keep going. Hey, we're 21 minutes in. That's actually impressive.
And probably the horse, the zebra, the ass, maybe the quagga. I'm not sure what all can be included in the horse kind, but it's obvious to a 5-year-old this is the same kind of.
I promised a friend today I wouldn't read every single funny chat that comes in just to test and see how it affects my channel, but forget it. We're doing this. You're gonna die someday too, and you'll stand in front of whale pain to be judged. What answer do you have when they ask you, what did you ever do for the kingdom of whale spermia? Over.
Of animal, and a crocodile and a duck are not the same kind of animal, and they cannot be. You cannot trace them back to a common ancestor. Not with, by your definition, it should be predictable. It should depict reality. The reality is every native that grows up around crocodiles will tell you when they have babies, the babies are crocodiles. And when they open up the eggs to eat the eggs,
well, see, Braden, the problem is God would never create anyone with that, from their perspective, defect. So they get around the deity having responsibility by doing the whole it's a choice thing, even though it very obviously isn't. Everyone's preferences when it comes to a partner are a combination of genetics and a bit of upbringing, but it's kind of a case of what you're exposed to, what may, in my opinion, what may first excite you. Like, I like redheads. I also really enjoyed Little Mermaid as a kid. When I was 4 or 5 years old, Little Mermaid. Coincidence? I honestly think not. I think it had an effect somewhere in my psyche. Is what it is. But I still say that would be from a predisposition for some traits. It's just whatever inside my genetics, inside of, how things are. It's weird talking about this stuff, especially when you talk about yourself. But we all have preferences. And some people's preferences just happen to be the same gender, or both genders, or any other combination of stuff. And they can't accept that. They can't understand that people simply have preferences and that it doesn't affect them whatsoever. So, of course, they have to vilify everyone who doesn't meet their standards for what a good person is, which is truly sickening the more you think about it.
If it's fertile enough and developed enough, it's a crocodile. There are simply no exceptions. You are living in a dream world. You have a religion, which...
Polyphonics popping up. Humans have a lot of physical similarities to chimpanzees. Are we not the same kind? I mean, technically, we're the ape kind. So, yeah, one can argue that because kind is never properly defined.
Teaches you a crocodile and a duck are related, but that is something you believe. Now, I resent having to be forced to pay for that to be taught in the school system, and I think most people do. We are 22 minutes in, and he's already just getting into his whole, the school children, pay the taxes and the school children and all that. It just, pardon the vulgarity, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but the man basically figuratively blew his load right from the get-go. He got desperate quick. Being forced at the point of a gun to pay for your religion to be taught to all these kids. If you really believe a crocodile and a duck are related, you should go start a private school and pay to teach whatever you want to have your kids taught. Teach them anything.
And yeah, Braden, exactly. The rate of homosexuality in nature is it's there. It's common. And depending on the animal's interest in going through that activity, they'll do anything to anything. So, it's like, come on, this is clearly natural. Clearly. But remember, from Kent's perspective, since everything is created, then technically speaking, everything is artificial and there is no natural world to contrast things with. So if I was ever discussing complexities with Kent, I would constantly fight him on any claims for contrasting anything with the natural world, because the natural world does not exist according to him.
You on in a private school, but I resent paying for your religion to be taught in our school system. So I think our theory is independently verifiable, without warning at all. Go to any country in the world, ask any farmer you come to. I promise you, I won't alert them that you're coming, and ask them what they get when they crossbreed, whether it's a plant or an animal.
And yes, Kent's incredible double standards are quite noticeable. I apologize for not being as in the weeds as normal, so to speak, and censoring myself a bit. I am legitimately trying to see if some quirks right after I hit 1,000 subs on YouTube are just a coincidence, or if it might have something to do with my videos now and how YouTube might be treating them. So I hate to play by their game, but I seriously need to actually see what kind of natural growth does or doesn't happen depending on the circumstance of what I post. I mean, it's not a true scientific, study, because I can't really control any variables beyond what I say and the content I put out. But there's been some oddities since the beginning of the month, and I want to try to see if anything resolves those issues. It's a little confusing. I hate playing Google's game, hate playing YouTube's game, but gotta do what I gotta do. So pardon me if I skirt around some things in detail like I usually would. Plus, I feel like this is going to be a really good stream, so I'd definitely like for it to stay monetized at the very least.
Doesn't matter to me. If they're raising horses, say, when you crossbreed your horses, what do you get for a baby? I predict, sitting right here in, where am I at? Monroeville, Alabama, that you can go to Timbuktu and the farmers there will tell you, yep, we cross our sheep and we get sheep, and we plant our corn and we get corn. I think my theory that they bring forth after their kind is extremely verifiable, and yours is completely unverifiable. Nobody has ever seen a duck.
And literally every single thing Kent says, as usual, is bass-ackwards.
Produce a non-duck, or a crocodile produce a non-crocodile. You believe it happened, and the textbooks teach it happened, and I can show you, if you'd like, straight from the public school textbooks, hundreds of sentences where they say these all animals are related. Charles Darwin said it's a truly...
Kent doesn't have a theory. Kent knows so little about science, he doesn't even have a hypothesis. He just has some musty old book that says some things. And a paranoid conspiracy theorist brain. And I was thinking about it earlier. I'm just going to say it, absolutely fucked up nature of the universe and just life. And again, we're all not explicitly wishing ill will on Kent Hovind, but Kent Hovind is somehow still alive. Even after the stuff that's done happened to him with, snake bites, this, that, the other, he's having his little strokes and stuff, still going. I was watching some of Bill Ludlow's content again earlier, and I'm still upset that he died. Like, actively kind of pissed about it. And I had interacted with him. This is back when I was passive in the community, just enjoying content. And to think that he had to leave the world, but someone like Kent can stay around? Just what the fuck, right? And we all know people like that. We all have that comparison. And sadly, that demonstrates the shit just happens nature of existence, of reality. Because that's what it boils down to. Things just happen. There is no agency to the universe. That's the thing that the religious types like this can't understand, is that there is no agency to the universe. Everything always has to have a why and a who. And it can't just be an is. But from Kent's perspective, to think that there would be a deity that would, by their action, take Ludlow versus Hovind? That's just messed up. Enough of that. Let's get back into the happy zone, and hopefully we'll get to hear King Crocoduck talk again real soon, because once they get into the open discussion, it gets good.
Wonderful fact that all plants and all animals throughout all time and space are related. Now, Darwin probably really believed that. I don't question that he believed it, but that doesn't make it true. Many people believe oddball things. It doesn't make it true. Science deals with things we can observe, study, and test. We don't observe ducks produce non-ducks. And we can't project back in time and imagine anything. If we go back 1,000 generations or 50,000 generations, what was the ancestor of the duck? I would predict it was a duck.
No, some other bird. Once you go back far enough to where the animal you're comparing would no longer be anything anyone would define as a duck. Because that's another thing with creationists and evolution deniers, is that they think that creatures are set in stone, that they just, magically, anamorph into the next thing is what evolution says. And that's me being generous to their view on things, presuming they keep at least the order correct, rather than just saying a pine tree gives birth to an elephant or something. But it's not like that. We find specimens, we find examples of whatever creature existed at that exact moment that it existed. In theory, if we could have a fossil of take any chain you want, a specimen every 100 years, as you go through, every one of those would show slight but still noticeable differences to the point you want to get at. When you're going through millions of years, it's crazy. The color spectrum analogy always works for this one. Is okay, you have red, you have blue. Tell me the point where red stops being red and starts being blue. You can't. There's a gradient in there, and that's what you have with evolution as you go through the fossil record, through the genetic record as well. Through genome sequences, you see where this stuff happens. We compare ourselves to other primates, and we can see where certain gene insertion events and certain mutations happened, and see that we're slightly more closely related to this group than this group on just the genetic level, let alone, fossil record and the like. But as Aronrod put it, a creationist point of view has no depth, literally or figuratively. So they can't think about these gradations going back are just this level of change, because everything has to be kind of a flat file with them. Everything just has to be here, 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 here. Here is a duck. When was it not a duck? It's like, well, define duck. How far back do we have to go before you'd stop calling it a duck? Because there you go. It came from something that's non-duck. We're just classifying individual specimens as we find them. It's random snapshots, if you will, of life. But all that beauty is lost on someone like Kent. Look at that punchable face. Just want to body slam him. Body slam. Hovind says he could take a fight. I want to see. And I don't want stats for nerds. There. You right click one time on YouTube and it just acts crazy for you. All right, let's continue.
Without exception. So I think we need to, if the moderator can do this, let's take one topic at a time. If you want to chase that one, is your theory verifiable, or is my theory verifiable? Is yours falsifiable?
Kent, to quote Deviant Outcast, you have no theory. Again, you don't even have a hypothesis. You barely have a fart of an idea. You didn't even come up with anything original beyond your stupid Hovind theory, which you probably stole from somebody else, too. Just modified it to your own purposes. Copy the homework, but make it look like you didn't copy the homework.
You could falsify my theory by having any animal or plant produce something other than its kind. I think your theory's already been falsified, because you predict by your theory that all animals are related, and yet you offer no evidence of that, no proof of that for sure. So you might twist some evidence to say, oh, this counts as evidence because look, the pine tree and the oak tree both have bark on it.
Kent, prove your God, demonstrate the soul, produce a ghost, verify Jesus, define sin, quantify it, measure it, and show me a unit of sin, and then we'll talk. Otherwise, Shut the hell up.
Therefore, they're related. No, maybe they're both designed that way. Okay, so science does.
Because that's kind of a sticking point with me on this stuff. Is not just the obvious lack of a deity out there or any kind of supernatural anything, but if the entire focus of this concept, especially from the Christian point of view, is the sin concept and how we must be saved from it, demonstrate that, quantify it, give me a measurable quanta of it, show me a sample of it, do a verifiable way to measure it. If it's real, then it should be somehow tangible. Either produce this or shut up, because the moment you take away, and this is why these young earth literal creationists and literalists exist, is because original sin is such a key thing to them, because without that, the entire Bible effectively falls apart. And a lot of people just let it be. That's the way religion has lightened up over the years. When you have these fundamentalists, that's what happens. So to me, that's the crux of the issue, is like, okay, you cannot demonstrate the concept of sin, ergo, regardless of the origin of anything, of how this, that, the other goes, the entire need for a savior is completely pointless, and no such punishment will be enacted because the criteria of quote unquote having sin has not been met, as sin clearly does not exist. I want you all to tell me in the chat, how many Gafafamables do you have? Every one of you has 0. Why? Because Gafafamables are just something I made up. You have none of them. I'm picturing it in my head. I know what a Gafafamable is. If I could find one, I'd show you, but I can't because it doesn't exist. Sounds silly, but then again, look at who I'm reacting to.
Doesn't interfere with evidence. I agree. Don't interfere with the evidence. I won't interfere. Go to Timbuktu and ask every farmer you find there what happens when they crossbreed, whether it's plants or animals. I don't care, either one. So I think it's the evolutionist that is the one that interferes, and is the one that has a stupid theory, stupid religion, in my very humble, totally unbiased opinion. If you want to believe a duck and a crocodile are related, you enjoy yourself. Do whatever you want to do. You can make your own YouTube channel and teach whatever you want to teach. But when it comes to forcing this stuff on the kids in public school, that's where we got to draw the line. If we should have public schools.
Well, Braden, to be clear, there are levels of supernatural stuff that I will entertain, partly because I don't want to say amuse me, but it does kind of provide an entertaining thought experiment. And it would be interesting if something of the nature could be proven. At the same rate, I obviously see no practical evidence of any of this stuff, but like, I like some elements of cryptozoology a lot. And it becomes hard sometimes having to rationalize and be like, just because I like the idea of Bigfoot, math don't math. Ghosts, pretty cool ideas. I have some concepts about it, but it's just me taking wild guesses that would probably be stuff I'd put in like a story I'd be writing, as opposed to anything practical. Idea's cool, but but I'm not going to call you crazy for that. When it's some of that kind of stuff, it's all right. It's harmless. It's way different from what these guys are talking about.
At all, which is another whole debate. They certainly shouldn't present one religion at taxpayer expense. But that's exactly what's happening. If someone refuses to pay for that, that's usually with house taxes on real estate. They come seize your house. You didn't pay your school tax, and they'll take your house away from you at the point of a gun. So all people are forced to pay for this one stupid religion of evolution to be taught in the school system, and I frankly resent that. I'm not trying to force creation into the schools. I never have. Teachers can already teach creation if they want, but it's not.
Oh, let the record show that Gafafamables are now officially part of the Yamato universe. You all now have one Gafafamable. If you had previous Gafafamables, and yes, you can pronounce it however you want, those have been returned to you with an additional bonus one. However, they still exist in the ether, and I don't actually know how to prove to you they exist, but there, I've given you all one. You're welcome. Use it wisely.
My goal to get creation into the schools. I want lies out of the textbooks, and I want religion, like evolution, out of the schools, unless they're going to teach all religions with equal time, which they're not going to do. So all of us are paid for one religion to be taught, which is yours, and I resent that. Let's see. You said scientists don't assume things, they make their observation, they try to match observations. Okay. Observation. Cows produce cows all over the world.
Observation. Kent Hovind is a moron.
All through history. That's an observation. Make your theory match that, please. Okay. You said creationist. I think you said, I'm trying to write frantically as you read your speech very quickly. Both positions deserve equal consideration. I don't know that that's true. I don't know that you should.
And the way Kent rambles on at 1,000 words a minute, he wants to complain about Crocoduck speaking. That was at a brisk pace, certainly, but nothing that anyone with, reasonable intelligence shouldn't have been able to follow. I say that, of course, some people are just used to, speaking very slowly, because some areas of English-speaking groups will speak slowly. So, like here in the South, where half the people talk like this. And then you got my weird ass, But yeah, he always has to throw those little jabs in as if it even means anything. It's like, dude, it's not even an insult. Just get over yourself. That just means you're incompetent. You're out of your league there, Hovind.
Waste time on dumb theories that don't have, just teach the truth. That's the truth, kids. We can teach the kids, hey, you got 2 bones in your wrist, radius and ulna. The whale has 2 bones in his flipper. Okay. The hamster's got 2 bones in his forearm. And somebody named them radius and ulna. I doubt the hamster named them that. But somebody named all these bones in the forelimb of creatures, radius and ulna, and humerus. I agree. We do have similar structure in the forelimbs of nearly all mammals, maybe all mammals, even bats. But what does that prove is the question. See, observing.
Kent, what it demonstrates, because proof only really exists in math, what it demonstrates is the nature of common descent. And that's where you claim common designer. But here's the thing. Any kind of special created thing could be created in any way the creator would want. Any given person is likely to create things that, while there may be similarities, if they had the option to just do whatever when forming a whole universe, a whole reality, would come up with literally whatever they want. Maybe have some standard ideas they roll with because they like them, sure. Maybe if they put horns on something, all the horns would be the same. Maybe sure. But always the same body plan in the particular branching way as you look back through the record, the same kind of branching methodologies that clearly indicate that there's common descent, that you go from simpler to more complex life, to look at it in a very layperson's thing. You see more specialization as you get to more extant life versus distant extinct life. But a special creator could just make everything however they want. None of it would at all match up. We've discussed this before in the chat of like how the way dragons are, the way Pegasus is a fine example. A lot of these mythological creatures that are based on, what we have, certainly, but violate taxonomy. Violate what we actually see in nature. You can never have a horse with wings, because then it has 6 fucking limbs. Tetrapods, by definition, don't have 6 limbs. They have 4. That's how it happened. Theoretically, you could get 6. Have Goro walking around, got his 4 arms just being like, what up? But I mean, that just genetics doesn't work out that way. So just common design claims don't work, Kent. They just don't. Get over it.
Something, oh wow, look at these similarities. That is a fact. Teaching anything beyond that, you got to be careful, because that becomes your belief. In the movie, I've got slides, I could call it up later if you'd like. In the movie The Green Mile with Tom Hanks, great movie, by the way. The fact is, the girls went missing. The fact is, John Coffey was found sitting with the 2 dead girls out in the woods, crying. The fact is, they arrested him for the crime. Those are facts. We observe that in the movie. The fact is, he didn't do it. But based on the evidence that they had, here's this black man sitting with 2 dead two dead white girls. They came to the wrong conclusion. He killed him when he didn't.
And Ken Hovind totally ignoring the message of overt racism in the story.
It is totally possible. You talk about the courts of law.
To quote that film, every time I'm done doing any video related to Hovind, I always think to myself, I'm tired, boss. Actually, I feel kind of bad saying that because of the emotion and symbolism of the scene and just the way everything goes, but sorry, I thought it'd be a funnier joke than it was. Now I've just made myself sad. Anyway, back to making myself even more sad with Hovind.
You're right. I don't have much respect for lawyers at all after what I've been through, but you're right. They don't care which position they argue. They're just good at arguing. And I think evolutionists are the ones that are doing what the lawyers are doing. They're good at convincing the kids, regardless of the evidence, convincing the kids that something happened when it didn't happen. So the lawyer should have looked into that case. The facts were the guy's caught with the dead girls. And the fact is he didn't do it. So they made an improper inference from the observation. And that is very possible.
Seth, great to see you, buddy. Hope you're having some fun.
I think we can observe, and everybody observes, dogs produce dogs, and oak trees produce oak trees. And if you want to infer something beyond that, be very careful because you're outside of science. But you guys seem to love to.
Have you ever seen a Kent produce a non-Kent? T-jump whenever that debate happened.
Think that evolution is part of science. It is not. It is a religious belief that you may believe very strongly, and you're welcome.
Braden, I would agree. Bet $20 he doesn't think there's anything racist about the movie because he thinks the same way. Definitely. We got super chats coming up. Woo! Experiments of Probiotic Chemistry with $10 says, if God exists, the universe doesn't require finely tuned constants. An all-powerful being could create beings who wouldn't be able to live on the surface of the sun. P.S. I just found your channel. Thank you so very much for the super chat. I am so happy that you did find my channel, that you're here, and you are absolutely right. That is a point I've made as well when the context seems right for it, is that the fine-tuning argument breaks down because, you know, when you bring in this, again, all-powerful, infinite, not limited deity that Kent specifies God cannot be limited, that can make life happen any particular way, life be any particular way, beings of pure energy, beings that don't need to eat. You know, Kent loves to talk about, oh, we came from the rocks. Rocks don't need to eat. They just exist. Sure, they don't do anything, but I mean, what about, you know, the God concept requires that, oh, we have to consume and use energy. It's like they don't think that by putting the deity in control of everything rather than things being natural processes, the entire house of cards that try to base every other argument on breaks down because it all becomes completely arbitrary. None of it is deterministic. It's just insane. Thank you so much for that super chat, and thank you for the awesome comment, as all my audience's comments are awesome. I guess racism doesn't exist because Hovind hadn't found the word in Genesis. Oh, it's in there. It's just by another name. Hovind, ever seen a Donnie produce a Kent? I've seen Donnie produce 4 Kent. Wait, scratch that. Green Mile was written by Stephen King, who has continually framed Christianity as exploitative. Interesting. You're welcome. Like the preacher and character. True. Also breaks down because the universe isn't finely tuned the way he thinks it is. How big is the Goldilocks zone again? Millions of miles? Yeah. Even just the basic idea. Because Venus and Mars are technically in it. One's on the hotter side, one's on the cold side. A lot of other factors determine those planets are a frosty hell or a acid rain hell. But Earth, kind of worked out. And again, there's always the basic logic that life developed on this planet for the specific conditions of this planet as opposed to the other way around. Got to do the Jurassic Park quote that life finds a way.
Comes to have it, but it's not science. So you sent a text that you'd like to talk about the 5 topics: the age of the universe, the Big Bang, radiometric dating, stellar evolution, and the speed of light. I would be honored to talk about all of those, any of those, one at a time. But I want you to try to see the bigger picture.
All right, Ken, you got about the same time. Casey
Okay.
did. Okay, so that, yeah, those your opening statement was a little more like a rebuttal, but that's fine. Casey, do you want to redirect a little bit? You did give him initially, if I'm not.
Baba Ali summing it up nicely. Limitations/constraints on a model are what are used to make predictions. You cannot limit God is literally making the God hypothesis useless. Bingo. Deviant Outcast with some shade. If you pay your lawyers and don't employ soft-sit idiots to represent you, maybe your impression of lawyers will be different. But as per usual with Kent, it's always a sample size of less than or equal to negative. Oh, good God. Oh, I just got the best people in my chats. Really, really I do. All comes back to the rainwater filling the pothole thinking, yep, the hole was made for me, of fitting it perfectly. Exactly. Love when moderators push back on Kent. And that's why Kent only ever does stuff on Donnie's channel, because Donnie rarely pushes against Kent. Rarely, unless it becomes an issue. And that's my problem with Donnie, is that he is intrinsically biased and he is not fair in the moderation of stuff, holding people accountable, allows double standards to happen. He's gotten better, but he still isn't up to a par where I'd consider him a good moderator, because again, he is completely biased explicitly. Even if he didn't participate in the discussion in the broader sense, he'd still be biased as a moderator. But the fact that he also produces his own content of the same nature as Kent and the ilk and is active in that sphere means he should not be hosting debates that certainly anyone should be taking seriously. But then again, it's a Kent Hovind debate. No one takes him seriously.
Not mistaken, those 5 things you want specifically to talk about, correct?
Yeah, and I said also in the opening statement, and I quote directly, "I've come to this debate with the understanding that the matters being discussed will exclusively pertain to the physical rather than biological sciences."
Okay.
So we agreed beforehand.
I think it says okay, like he didn't just totally blather on about cows produce cows for 15 minutes.
We wouldn't touch on biology. That's not my field. I'm in physics. So I've come here to talk about physics. I will address one point that you made and just leave it there about the kinds thing.
Okay.
But first things first. Religion, God, it's nothing to do with this conversation. Whether or not the universe is 13.8 billion years old, whether or not evolution took place, has no impact whatsoever on on my metaphysical beliefs on whether or not the universe has a creator, and vice versa.
And I love right here, not that others haven't done it, but just the way at which Crocoduck explicitly abstracts religion in and of itself from the actual science. Something that Kent simply cannot allow, because his entire script runs on the idea of creating a false analogy that both the religions, ergo teaching one of the religions in school is bad, and also he tries to negate any of the typical counterpoints to religious thinking by, doing a pot call kettle on it, tuko kui, that if one was to say that, then their religion would be just as bad, even though, of course, that's not the case at all. Because evolution isn't religion. Science isn't a religion. Cosmology isn't a religion. Physics isn't a religion. Base is a religion, but none of the other stuff.
You convince me right now that there is a God. It would have no impact whatsoever on my views on evolutionary theory.
Okay.
So
Just respond to that before you go off to a new topic. Let's start one topic at a time. Here's as many as you want, but let me answer.
One topic at a time. One topic at a time. Shut up, Kent.
I think
hold on. You brought up a bunch of topics. Let me.
I was responding to your initial.
Well, that was his opener. And by the way, I want to take the hit because for the whole evolution with creation thing that I said initially. Yeah, I didn't know exactly what the topic was. I was asking initially. I didn't have a good confirmation on that, so I do take the hit for that. Why did you address one specific thing at a time, though? Make it a little bit easier. Casey, I assume my voice is a little bit shot today. Please accept my apologies, but What is one thing at a time you want to address with Ken, and then kind of go back and forth on that one for a while?
Well, I would like to talk about the age of the universe and how we know the Big Bang actually took place, and that it took place 13.8 billion years ago, as opposed to 6,000 years ago.
Okay. Give me your evidence that the universe is 13.8 billion years old, and let's talk about that.
All right, Hubble's law.
Okay, which is, describe that for the average viewer here to listen to Hubble's law. How would you define that?
An admission right there that Kent has no idea what Hubble's law is. Just got to point that out, that even back when this debate first happened, and I was still relatively fresh with active Kent Hovind stuff, I heard that and was like, wow, he just fully admitted that he doesn't know what it is. You know, admitted it without admitting it. Because he'll never admit he doesn't know something. He's just like, oh, I'll make it for the average person. And it's like, yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about.
V equals h naught times d. The velocity, the recessional velocity of the galaxies in the universe is equal to the Hubble constant times the distance to the galaxy. And this relationship was discovered by Edwin Hubble in 1929 when he was looking through the Mount Wilson Observatory telescope.
Okay.
What this tells us is that the universe is expanding. There's a redshift that is proportional to every galaxy, well, almost every galaxy. The ones that are close enough to us to be gravitationally attracted, those ones are blue shifted instead of red shifted. But all of the other ones, the ones that are too far for gravity to take over whatever is causing the expansion, those are red shifted, and it's all proportional to the distance. Everything is moving away from each other. Now, hold on. I'm getting to the 13.8 billion thing.
Okay.
Now, Einstein's general relativity was published in 1916, confirmed in 1919. And a few years later, the mathematician Alexander Friedmann played around with Einstein's field equations. Same equations that have been making basically all of these predictions that have been verified again and again and again. The most recent one was gravitational waves last year, 100 years after he first published it. So it's one of the most well-established theories in physics. You can't take down Einstein, basically. I mean, you could try if you want, but the point is the Friedmann equation, which comes from Einstein's field equations, which is directly derived from it, makes predictions about the state of the universe at different points in time. It tells us about how the state changes over time. And when you apply it to Hubble's law, you're able to derive the age of the universe from this equation. And that comes out to be 13.8 billion years.
So beautifully explained. And while he brought up elements of the math, he brought up just enough for someone to paint the picture in their head of how these two formulae, when worked into each other, result in that value. I would pay to see Kent actually try to solve any of this math. Any of it. I know he could never do it. He would not even try. If you locked him in a room and told him the way to get out is to at least try to solve this, he wouldn't. Because he would show his utter incompetence on stuff. He'd rather starve than try to do the equation to get out. And I just find that hilarious.
Well, let me respond if you're done on that. I agree. It appears most of the galaxies are red-shifted. That is an observation that I think is correct. I agree that this probably indicates the stars are receding. Those
Galaxies.
The galaxies, okay, no galaxy. The stars are receding. I agree. Now, that is where the science stops, and the belief or...
So, KC hasn't produced anything in a little while, but that's because he's busy doing actual science. And YouTube and all this stuff was a thing he did at a time when he had the time, and he ain't got the time right now. That's as far as I can pull things. You know, he's doing the kind of shit Kent wishes he had the opportunity to do. But Kent is too stupid to ever have been able to get to the level that Casey is.
Or theories begin, and you have to be cautious about that. There's an awful lot of stars out there in the universe. On my DVD number 7 of my series, Creation Seminar Series, I cover this about the starlight problem or question. You are missing the entire point on this completely. It is true the stars are giving the galaxies are giving a red shift. Now, what does that prove? Just like it was true John Coffey was sitting there with the dead girls. That was true. What does it prove? It does not prove he's guilty of killing them. If the stars are giving a red shift, numerous things could be causing that. Primarily, I think the Bible says 17.
Note right here that Hovind pulls the classic, I'm just going to ignore all the other aspects of science that tie into this, including the things that Casey just brought up of the math, and just treat it as its own thing. Part of the reason he does is one topic at a time is because he wants to make that one topic so granular that what you're saying sounds like nothing more than an assertion without all the supporting evidence. Because Ken Hovind is a scumbag.
Times that God stretched out the heavens. If indeed the scripture is correct that God made the earth first and then made the stars on day 4 and stretched them out into place, we would see the same red shift from all the galaxies being stretched out away from the earth, and could still only be 6,000 years old. He could have made them yesterday and stretched them out to 13.8 billion light years away. So they may be 13.8 or whatever number they're using this year, 13.8 billion light years away. Could be. I don't argue with that. Probably true. That does not mean it's 13.8 billion years old. Surely you know a light year is a distance. It's not a time. A light year has nothing to do with time.
And yet it's in the name, Kent. The only person who doesn't understand what a light year is you. There's a reason for that unit of measurement. There's a reason it's called what it is. And there's math to prove it. Once again, you'll notice when it gets to the physics and cosmology, it all boils back down to math. And even in biology, a lot of stuff boils back down to math once you get to the chemistry aspect of biology, i.e. organic chemistry, or at least the aspects of organic chemistry that are relevant to life processes. But that's neither here nor there because that stuff gives me a massive headache. Quite literally, sometimes, technically speaking. Meta jokes. But yeah, Kent simply cannot do any of this math. As I said earlier, it renders any objections he has moot. Because he doesn't understand why a light year is what it is. He doesn't understand what the redshift means. He doesn't understand Hubble's constant. I don't think the man understands what a watt of electricity is. Man doesn't understand what a watt is. Don't even get started on newtons, kilonewtons, joules. The man would have a stroke. You know, he might comprehend horsepower, which is weird given that's defined as like 713 watts, I think, some weird number. But still, I mean, he might not understand what horsepower is. He might just know it just because, you know, I know about cars because I was brought up in the day when your daddy would just give you a car and a plot of land to build your house. And this thing had 20 horses under the hood. Hovind.
It's the distance that light travels in a year, about 6 trillion miles.
And he says that, and yet he doesn't understand what that means. Because, of course, the universe is plastic to him. Which brings up another thing. We touched on the fine-tuning arguments earlier, how everything in existence is fine-tuned. Yet, simultaneously, people like Kent, to rationalize the evidence that the universe is not 6,000 years old, that the laws of physics had to change at random points, just arbitrarily, thus defeating any idea of fine-tuning, as Casey actually gets into at some point in one of these 3 debates.
Or 182 point, well, you don't want to use 9.8 meters, whatever the number is in metric system. I could calculate it out. It doesn't matter to me. But nobody's ever seen a star forming. None. I've got plenty of quotes I can show you on screen or watch my video 7. Nobody sees one forming. We see a lot of stars. We see them blow up once in a while. And we do see the galaxies red shifting. Now, there are 2 options to that, at least 2. One is they are 13.8 billion years away, and it took 13.8 billion years for the light to get here. That's the only option you can see. The other option is they were stretched out into their current place, and they're 6,000 years old and 13.8 billion light years away. But even this, Casey, If the universe is 200 quadrillion years old, that doesn't help the evolution theory. We never see anything produced outside of its kind. So it doesn't. You can have
all this talk of cosmology, all this stuff, but you know, my animals making babies, Hovind, and then I literally popped in KC calling him out on it.
We're not talking about evolution.
Okay, you're talking about the age of the universe. I think we have certainly a lot of historical evidence, from anecdotal evidence from people going back 4,000 or 5,000 years, and that's it. There's nothing beyond that. There's no historical proof that the Earth is any more than 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 years old. We see the stars redshifted. I agree. I think you're giving only one interpretation of how that could happen, and I think yours is wrong.
Okay, can I address that?
Sure, please do.
Okay. We come again to the same evidence, different interpretation nonsense, and this is the kind of thing I was talking about. Let's start with this Bible thing about how the Bible supposedly predicted.
Sorry, I was getting a little snack in me during that. I'm going to bring up a subject that our friend Deviant is very aware of and familiar with, that helps demonstrate that, you know, the world is more than 6,000 years old. Ancient Egypt. For that civilization to even exist, predecessor societies would have had to have already been pretty well established for us to get what we know of as ancient Egypt. From my perspective anyway, she can fill in nuance, but it goes back to all those ancient civilizations we have that clearly were already doing real well at the time when these Bronze Age fables were supposed to have occurred. Again, the pyramids existed before the flood would have happened. How does that work? But what do we know? We're just, you know, people who care about facts and reality. We don't read the Bible, so we don't know shit, Hovind.
The stretching of the universe. The verse you're referring to in Isaiah says that God stretched the universe like a tent. I don't know what this means, like a tent. I don't think that it resembles a tent at all. But it's irrelevant. I'm not here to talk about religion either. What I do find concerning is your view that we are able to see 6,000-year-old light from objects that are 13 billion light years away. That we can look at something. You correctly said that light is a unit of distance and not time. A light year is a distance, not time. But if you remember from 6th grade, you might remember this thing called the distance triangle. You have a distance, you divide it by the rate, the speed of light c, and you end up with the time. I mean, how do you think we measured a light year? Do you think that we took a ruler and we said, okay, this is how far? No, we multiplied the speed of light by the amount of time that's in a year, and we end up with a light year.
Notice again, somebody just popped in out of nowhere. It's like, who is this guy? Why is he here? This was a thing about like Google Hangouts. Is like there were, I don't even know if it still exists, but there were like a lot of little weird quirks about it that it wasn't quite designed for what people were using it for, and it kind of lacked certain security aspects. I don't know. I used it like once or twice. We got a super chat from Rosina. Can't believe the Great Pyramids of Giza was pre-flood, but that all the older pyramids were post-flood. Interesting. I watched one video Kent did about the pyramids, but he started talking about like the 144,000 bricks and some biblical symbology and some geometry stuff. And someone emailed me about it, and I just completely ignored them. I left that on red. Harvin, if you're going to email me, make it good.
So when we're talking about a light year, we're talking about the distance that light travels in a year. If light is traveled 1 light year, it has taken 1 year for light to travel that distance. These are all equivalent statements. This is what it means for it to be a light year. So when we say something is 10 billion light years away, we're saying,
look, we got random dude with headset on and MySpace avatar. I think the chat gets pretty big at a point. Somewhere Steve brings it up. I don't know why it just amused me so much about this.
That the light has taken 10 billion years to traverse this distance of 10 billion light years. There's a reason why it's called that. Now, if it is the case that the universe was stretched out and that that got stretched out the universe and that it's these objects are now 10, 11, 12 billion light years away, and that we're seeing 6,000-year-old light, we have a problem here. These things should be redshifted into oblivion. We should not be able to see these things. In order to be able to see these objects 13 billion light years away, the evidence.
It's secretly a really crappy version of The Ring called The Hovind, where you watch a Hovind video on VHS, and then you become a sovereign citizen, and, you know, when the cops pull you over, you tell them you're traveling and not driving. And I don't know what happens after that. It scared me too much, because I didn't want to be Hovinded. Hovind. Am I being detained, officer? Hovind?
For it, the light itself has to show indications of being 13 billion years old, and you get this from the Hubble equation. You have to look at how redshifted they are and compare that to the Hubble time.
Let's slow this down. Take that one topic.
Once again, a case where Casey brings up abstractly, mind you, in a way that everyone could understand, the fact that there's math behind this and that the math checks out. And Kent's just like, slow it down one topic at a time, because I don't understand this stuff, because I'm a fucking moron, Hovind.
At a time.
You brought up like 5. Come on, Kent, don't tell me one topic at a time when you're bringing up like 5 things. You brought up stellar evolution. Don't play these games, man. Come on.
Yes. Oh, I love Casey for that.
At one point, with the distance of the stars.
You brought up stellar evolution as well. I didn't even get to that.
Do we? One second, guys. Do we know who these other people are that are coming to the hangout?
Anybody?
No idea.
I don't know how the link is out there. I did not put the link out to anybody. Matthew Thomas.
Well, see, this is where moderator, we'll go one sentence at a time or one word at a time if you'd like, but he's.
The big bad Crocoduck is bringing up stuff that I don't understand. I gotta play my trump card of one topic at a time, and cause I'm fucking stupid, Hovind.
He leaves a lot of points hanging that are going to confuse the audience into thinking he's right.
Well, let's stick.
Audience, are you confused by anything Casey has said? Seriously, are you? Because I'm not. I'm not at all. I love this stuff. Can barely understand most of it. Sometimes it does go over my head. I can usually abstract it, though, after I study it, which is something that I, like so many of you, actually do, is study things we're interested in. Kent doesn't seem to even study his own Bible, let alone anything he spends his life fighting against. Which I wouldn't necessarily expect him to if it wasn't for the fact that he doesn't literally do this shit all day, every day. So I don't know, man. You just said it before, I'll say it again, Kent. You're kind of a waste of life. In my opinion, once you stop learning stuff, it's over. Last thing I'm going to do before I die is still be learning stuff.
He brought up the fact of Hubble's law, Hubble's constant, and why that is indicative of an old Earth. Do you want to touch on that a little bit more specifically, Casey, and why that would be an old Earth as the only explanation, as opposed to Kent's version of a young Earth, a young universe, and why that could or could not be?
Kent's version. Hello. Yeah. Kent's version is physically impossible. You can't have light travel a distance of 13.8 billion light years over the course of 6,000 years. It's not possible. When you're saying that we're seeing these things that are 13.8 billion light years away, what it means is that light has traveled from these things a distance of 13.8 billion light years. If the light is 6,000 years old, we should not be able to see past a spherical shell of 6,000 light years, even if the universe is stretching. If the universe is stretching past that point, it becomes redshifted to the point where we can't see it in any spectrum.
I love that concept. It basically becomes redshifted to oblivion. And these are values that, again, can be calculated. Like, I was actually curious on the upper limit of frequency in a photon. and you get up to gamma rays, and that's the limit. And as I looked into it more, it was like, oh, you start reaching a point where the wavelength is smaller than is like at or below atomic nuclei or subatomic particle levels. So you start reaching a point where the wavelength is tinier than the photon. So that becomes an impossibility. And I've thought to myself, like, wow, that is so wild. And of course, you reverse it. You think about the idea of something going so far into the red zone and, past, not from UV, past infrared and on down. And eventually, if you stretched, 6,000 years of space to 13.8 billion years of space, yeah, you wouldn't be able to see anything. Like, even I can do the mental abstract math and think, yeah, that's kind of like pulling a slinky to its limits. It's no longer a slinky. It's just a steel thing.
That 6,000 year shell becomes our cosmic horizon, and everything outside of the shell is expanding away from us faster than the speed of light. But that's not what we observe.
Okay, well, let me answer that. If a person, let's say a person is traveling in
I would like to remind the audience to please not bring up things that will trigger deviant outcast and anything involving idiocy with understanding of ancient Egypt, because I seriously do not want them to be any more stressed than they already are in their amazing work elsewhere. Because we come here to laugh and have fun, not give deviant outcast a heart attack because she learned something new that Kent Hovind's dumbass thinks about the the wonderful ancient Egyptian empire. Sorry, I'm just literally reading what she has to say. Just pyramids are awesome. Egypt's so freaking awesome. Used to be so into it as a kid. Should really get back to studying. Maybe one day.
a car going 700 feet per second away from you, and the speed of sound is, say, 711 feet per second at that density, atmospheric pressure, et cetera. All kinds of things affect the speed of sound. Okay, so here's a person in a car blowing their horn as loud as they can. They're traveling away from you at 700 feet per second. After X number of seconds, we notice we can still hear the horn. After 4 seconds, we could still hear the horn, but now they're way more than using the speed of sound, since they're going slightly less than.
It just hit me that Kent's analogy is even more stupid than normal, because it's not just like to a degree it works, because really when it boils down to is you're trying to reference the Doppler effect, sure, whatever. But when you're dealing with sound through a medium and, extremely low velocity stuff like that, completely different paradigm from photons moving through an effective vacuum, from effectively massless particles moving at or just below the value of C. Completely different physics going on there. It is impossible for Kent to comprehend that physics gets really weird when you reach those kinds of extremes. I would love to talk to him about it, but I don't have it in me to be able to articulate it in a way that would even give him a chance. Because again, I can barely wrap my head around some aspects of it, or like I can understand it mentally, but I can't put it into words. That's where I kind of have problems with this stuff. Totally makes sense in my head, but if I try to describe it to you, it's just weird. Can't do it.
The speed of sound, it's what's called the Doppler effect. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. So if the stars are indeed receding at a certain percentage of C, the value of speed of light, they could indeed still be 6,000 years old and be billions of light years away. You are completely missing the point.
I think you're misunderstanding the principle, Kent. The Doppler effect. Let me explain. The Doppler effect is comparable to the situation, but you have.
Sorry, I'm interjecting here only on grounds of to give an idea of the concept that I'm talking about, where I can mentally construct the idea but can't describe it to you. I had to look at double check, because of the way our eyes are set up, there's certain colors that we can't see, color concepts, impossible colors, like the idea of bluish yellow or greenish red. We, in a sense, can't see. If you have the normal visible spectra functionality of your eyes. Some people, it's going to be different, and they kind of can see this, but the way their brains interpret it might be different. But like, if you try to make like a bluish yellow, your brain just switches between the two. It can't put the two together for reasons I watched in some kind of video. That's kind of how it is. I draw that analogy to me trying to describe some concepts of physics that I can wrap my head around, but just can't describe. It's like trying to describe that color to you. I just can't do it.
You have it wrong. When this vehicle is moving away from you and it's honking its horn, yes, the waves.
Rosina with a $4.99 super chat. If anyone likes tiny math, I highly recommend looking up Planck scales. Oh yes. Planck distance is the smallest unit of measurement possible. That is basically the fundamental distance, if you will, of everything in existence. Super tiny. And then if memory serves, the hottest temperature you can get is also the Planck temperature. I forget exactly what defines it, but it's really, really hot. Well past the point of, hadronic matter or anything like that. I don't think the universe at the beginnings of inflation was even up to that temperature. Like, that's how high a temperature it is. But there is actually a maximum limit to temperature. And that's pretty crazy. We also got $13.99 Canadian from Braden. You know what this desert needs? Big ass triangles. Pharaoh Secundis, probably. Sorry, it took me a second. The black on yellow is actually a little hard for me to read because I'm an old man and my vision's giving out, and I need to see an eye doctor that actually gives a fuck. And why I did that in a Hovind voice, I don't know. Oh, hell, that dude's here. I thought he was banned. I blacklisted him. Come on. Anyone got a wrench? Anyone want to do the business for me? Because apparently StreamYard doesn't get the memo. Anyway.
Get stretched out. That is true. But the frequency with, if you look at the actual Doppler equation, you're able to calculate the distance that the car is at. And it's the same general principle with the speed of light. This is basically Hubble's law. That's what the equation tells us. It tells.
Oh, don't worry, Marty. I have that as well. It's not nearly as bad as it used to be, and it was never that bad in general, but I definitely have it, and it has been a problem. That's why I have to go with more abstract abstractions of these things.
Tells us what the relationship is between the frequency of these redshifted lights is to the distance and the recessional velocity. It's same with the Doppler equation.
Okay, now slow down.
No,
you're saying we can calculate the distance that the car is away. That is only if you know what percent of the speed of sound it was leaving at. You don't know the speed of the stars were stretched out into place.
We can see the frequency of the redshift. We can see that the spectroscopy of the stars have moved by a certain amount, and that gives us the value for the frequency. Once we have that, all we need is the Hubble constant, and we're golden. We get the distances. Not even of stars. We're talking galaxies. We're talking intergalactic objects.
I didn't argue about the distances. I said I'm arguing about the time.
Okay, but this is related to time.
A light year is not a year. A light year is a distance.
Okay, Ken, let's try this again. If light has traveled...
I just love this, Kent, not being able to comprehend what a light year is.
For a light...
Then again, when have definitions ever mattered to Kent except the ones he likes to cherry pick from a random internet search?
Year. It has traveled a distance of a light year. How long has it taken it to travel that?
If it is traveling at 1 light year per second, then it's...
I was traveling at 1 light year per second. He just completely crashed head first into the wall of I am way out of my league. Oh, that moment's beautiful. Let's hear it again.
If it is traveling at 1 light year per second, then it's 1 second old.
Hold on. No.
Oh, so Kent just described light. How many seconds are in a year? Hang on. How many seconds are in a year? Kent just described light going at 3.154 to the 7th power times faster than it does. I can only imagine the kinds of outright hell for that brief instant that anything still exists we would be in if the speed of light suddenly was shifted to that value. If c was shifted to that value, because that's something people really need to understand. And I hate, and being very serious for a moment, I actually hate how cosmic speed limit, the value of c, is taught, in that it's always described as and thought to be the speed of light, thus allowing someone like Kent to say they've slowed down the speed of light to, you know, however much, when they're talking about, you know, phase velocity versus group velocity versus other things. You know, the value that's being discussed is the value of c, cosmological constant, a maximum velocity in real space that anything can have. And yes, I just used real space. Sorry, side effect of being a Star Wars fan. Once you get to that speed, relativistic properties dominate, so things get very weird. Time becomes the factor that shifts, as opposed to, or doesn't shift, as opposed to the actual, you know, positioning over time. Like, time moves at rates. See, it's so weird to articulate, but time is what moves more than your distance. As in a photon, the entire existence of a photon is instantaneous from its point of view, even if it's traveled 13 billion light years from 13 billion years from some point in space to us. From the photon's perspective, all that time was instantaneous. Really wild, right? Point is, the value of c is just that, c. Light happens to move at that speed. Radio waves happen to move at that speed in a vacuum, when not being stopped by a medium that causes different propagation. And it needs to be taught as that, because you create a problem when people associate the speed of light with just that value, that all lights move in that way. But that's not the case. That's why we have refraction. That's how, you know, my glasses work. That's how the screen works. That's how half the stuff works. That's how the freaking half the internet works at this stage, fiber optic cable. You know, it just bothers me that it's taught in the way it is, because it creates an improper understanding on what it actually means and what you're discussing. And obviously I can't articulate it much better, but I feel that the scientific education community can refine the teaching of that in, you know, maybe not necessarily grade school per se, but in middle and high school science classes, to where they understand in E equals mc squared what the c means. It doesn't mean speed of light. It means the cosmologic constant, because that's where everyone knows it from. Off my soapbox, let's continue. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Also, I've always thought TED Talks were stupid, but that's a whole other discussion.
That's not my question. Let's say light has traveled a distance of a light year, yeah? How long does it take to get from the beginning to the finish line of this light year long racetrack?
With no other things affecting it, light would travel about 186,282 feet or miles per second.
And how long would it take?
It would take 1 year to go that distance if
Thank you,
nothing
Kent.
else is affecting it.
Thank you, Kent.
You're missing the point.
Well, that's easier. Ken Hovind doesn't understand anything. He legitimately doesn't even understand his own theology very well. That's the funny thing about it. His own theology, like his own, he doesn't even understand well, because it's self-contradictory in many aspects. But of course, he'll never admit that. You know, not just the normal Bible's contradictions and the like, but even the shit he made up contradicts itself. It's pretty funny. Should really try to put a piece together on the contradictions in his own theology. But I just do not have the patience to deal with deep diving into the Hovind theory. Like I've told myself, I'm going to watch that video one day. Never do it. Never going to do it. I know I'm not, because I'm just not that sadistic to myself. Masochistic? One of the two.
Completely.
I guess it depends on if I have, you know, personality disorder or not, which as far as I'm aware, I don't have, but I don't know. I could just not be aware of them. Anyway, jokes aside.
Absolutely, completely missing the point.
You say that over and over, but you're not demonstrating it. Tell me, what am I missing?
Okay, how old was Adam on day one?
Kent has no concept of relativity whatsoever. And this is hilarious. He's bringing up, how old was Adam day one? Well, Kent, you talk about the layers. How old are the layers? How old were Kent's kids? How old were Adam and Eve's first sons? How old were Cain and Abel when they were born? Were they as old as the universe, or were they just from the date that they were formed, and that we decided to assign them an identity and decide this is the arbitrary day at which we consider them to have existed? Hovind?
According to
So
he was.
you're using the Omphalos argument then. You're saying that the universe was created old.
No, I'm not using that argument.
No. Kent does not understand that electromagnetism is a thing. He understands magnets and he understands electricity, but I don't think he understands the entire field dynamics, the existence of the field dynamics that are electromagnetism. I seriously don't think, I legitimately don't think he actually understands electricity, though, to not even be funny. The way he demonstrates his understanding of physics is so limited that I truly think he doesn't understand electricity in the least. He might legitimately think it's magic.
I'm saying in order for it to function, it has to be created mature. There has to already be apples hanging on the tree for
Sydney, you could have stopped at just Kent has no concept, because he doesn't.
Adam to eat. He can't wait for them to grow from a seed. God had to make a mature creation because they're going to die if there isn't food. The whole system's already in place.
So that's what you're saying. You are saying that the universe was created to look old.
No, not to look old. It was created mature. To us, it would look old because that's all we're familiar with, is born at, small and grow bigger. But to
No, I am not Atheist Junior. He and I don't even have similar voices. Why do people think that? This isn't the first time I've had someone come in saying something like that.
them, it looked normal.
What is the distinction? What is the distinction between looking old and being old?
Well, it depends which one you are. To us, everything that looks old probably is old. To Adam and Eve, he looked brand new. And Eve looked brand new. But if God made the stars on day 4 and stretched them out into place, which is what it says 17 times in the Bible, then it could indeed be 6,000 years old and be billions of light years away. You don't get it.
Okay, I predicted this. This is Hovinding. I'm going to read again what I wrote. I predict, at the end, I said, I predict that whenever I corner.
And at that point, Kent demonstrates not only his lack of short-term memory, because this was only towards 30 minutes ago that Crocoduck had said this, but more accurately that he doesn't pay attention to anything his opposition says unless he can jot down some quick notes and go somewhere on a script for it. You'll notice that's the only thing he thinks he's been addressing. And once the subject gets hard hit onto the subject of, physics, light speed, etc., Kent breaks down completely. He starts fumbling. It's beautiful. That's why I love this trio of debates, quote unquote.
Mr. Hovind on any matter, demonstrating how the rejection of a particular phenomenon results in a vision of the universe that is patently absurd, such as the universe being 6,000 light years long. My opponent will claim without evidentiary justification that the variables under discussion or the principles being rejected used to be different, that the laws of physics, for whatever reason, changed over time in such a manner as to make the universe appear to be billions of years old rather than thousands. Now, what you're saying is that through this invocation of magic, through this divine intervention, that in effect the laws of physics were different, that this stretching of the universe to its present size with the recessional velocities that it was stretched with, and which it continues to be stretched with, by the way, it hasn't stopped.
Right.
That this contradicts what the science says, and that there's this special case of divine intervention that makes it only look mature when in reality it's only 6,000 years old.
You're missing the point again. You did not.
Missing the point. Yeah, right, Kent. $5 super chat from Marty Cameo. Highly recommend you cover Ray Comfort at some point. He's a mess. I've been wanting to. I just find it tricky because, honestly, because the production values of his junk. We did, at the beginning of one of my streams, touch on a Ray Comfort video, but that was only in passing because I found it interesting before I got to the main event, so to speak. This is a reply to Braden bringing up, didn't God create the sun on day 3? So how did 3 days pass already? With Sydney Raptor popping up, even worse, sun, moon, and stars on day 4. if I may steel man the argument, the deity knew how long a quote-unquote day would be, and so defined things in reiterating the story as those values, knowing that they were taking that amount of time to do part 1, part 2, and then eventually part 3. So one could argue, and I can't believe I'm actually trying to interpret biblical constructs here, one could then interpret, therefore, that a day is defined by the deity and that the earth rotates at that rate of 1 rotation per day because the deity determined that the day would be that amount of time as opposed to the other way around, if that makes sense. And that's the scary thing, is that I can come up with that stuff right there, and it makes infinitely more sense than anything Kent says. If I didn't have the ethics I do, what if I was just ready to scam people, I could start my own cult. I mean, excuse me, church, just like Kent. But I'm about being honest. I'm about being real with people, being friendly with people, being, being me. Kent is all about himself and his bullshit mythology.
Not corner me, by the way, at all. I did not reject any laws of physics. Instead of light, let's take it with sound. If a car is leaving us at 700 feet per second, but the sound
Well, that just means God changed how long a day is, Hovind.
from the car is traveling back toward us at 711 feet per second. Is it possible for the sound measuring at the speed of sound to be different than the actual distance to the car or to the time it took for the car to get there?
The frequency is going to be different, yes.
Relativity is not a thing Kent understands at all. As I brought up earlier, he wouldn't be making this analogy if he understood any of the basic principles of relativistic physics.
Sure, that's what the Doppler effect is all about when it comes to sound. It's the same with light. That's why we.
But the speed is not different, Kent. The speed hasn't changed. The frequency has.
Well, that's why we have a red shift.
Yes.
Doppler effect.
But he's saying that's due to a change of frequency, not a change of speed.
Is
Do
it?
you know what the difference is between frequency and speed, Kent?
I do. What if a star is leaving us at 1/2 the speed of light? Are the galaxies moving away from us? Yes or no? Are the galaxies moving? Yes or no?
The galaxies themselves are moving. But when we're talking about the expansion of the universe, it's more accurate to say that the space itself is
You
stretched.
believe, I believe, we both believe in the expansion of the universe. I believe it's happening.
I agree, and I'm sure he would just weasel his way out of it one way or another. Am I talking about Kent or am I talking about the God? Pick one. Doesn't matter. They both lie all the time.
I can't prove it. I think it's difficult to measure those.
Except one is real and one is imaginary. Sadly, we're left in a world where Kent Hovind is the real one.
Distances beyond about 100 light years with the trigonometry, but
You don't need parallax to make those measurements. You can use standard candles.
luminosity, that kind of stuff. Okay, but if the stars are 13.8 billion light years away, in your mind, the light had to start there to get here, when the reality is the star started here and went there, and Adam and Eve could see the taillights as they receded, and they could have been made 2 seconds ago and still be that distance out there if they were moving fast enough.
Okay, Kent, again, you're misunderstanding the physics. If the light, let's say the star started 6,000 light.
And see, Kent could easily get himself out of this by just saying the light was put there in motion. I think Ken Ham does that. And if that's the route you're going to go, that's fine. What can you say with that? But instead, Kent is doubling down that the light all originated from these points explicitly and then was pushed out. And so just it all breaks down. He doesn't realize the kind of insanity he just proposed from a mathematics standpoint.
Years away from us, and the light began moving toward us. And then God stretches the universe, and the light is now 13.8 billion light years away, say. And now the light, which started 6,000 light years away from us, is reaching us. Yeah?
I didn't say it started 6,000 light years
Let's
away.
say for the sake of argument that it started 6,000 light years away from us.
And
And
the
that
light would just now be coming on. I agree.
And now we're looking at the light of a star that's 13.8 billion light years away, even though the light is 6,000 years old. Is that what you're saying?
That is one option. I don't know where they started from. All I know is the Bible 17 times says God.
Okay, hypothetically, it starts 6,000 light years away, and so we see light that's.
I love that he cuts him off right there. It's just like, shut up, Kent. No one wants to hear you repeat the same crap over and over.
6,000 light years old instead of 13.8 billion years old, even though the star is 13.8 billion light years away.
No, I disagree, because Adam and Eve could see the stars the first day. So they could not have started 6,000 light years away. Or he wouldn't have seen them. Nobody would have seen them till today. They would just now be flickering on in the universe. And we all know from history, people have always seen the stars. So I disagree. They started 6,000 light years away. But whatever distance they started doesn't matter. The fact is, you can answer the same problem of these great distances to the stars with either great age or a stretching of the universe.
Okay, but the answer is no, and I'm going to get to that in a second. But let's say they're a distance x away. Let's say they're 30 light hours away.
Here's for your theory.
Hello?
You have chosen to believe the stars indicate great age rather than stretching because you need billions of years for your crocodile to turn into your duck.
No, this thing happens independently. This has nothing to do with evolution whatsoever. Even if Charles Darwin was never born, and evolutionary theory never.
Well, experiments in prebiotic chemistry, I do not know why it's not working. I haven't seen anything strange pop up on my end, but then again, when do YouTube notifications about anything ever work? But I appreciate the thought either way. I really do, too. I mean, let me take a moment, say how much I love you guys and gals. Y'all are awesome. I do it for y'all. Because no one sane, without good reason, would spend this much time tackling 0645 2017, Amot, and others. Not trying to talk, all super positive and hype myself up. I'm just saying. I take the challenge because I like y'all and y'all like what I do. Casey, a biologist or astrologist, he studies physics, it's my understanding, and astronomy. Astronomist, not astrologist. Astrology is the fanciful, what's your sign stuff. What am I gonna say? Brain completely just crapped out. Yeah, he does like high level physics, sciencey stuff. Super chat fails to send. It's usually because you said a bad word. Now it makes sense.
Came to fruition, this would still be the case. People would still be talking about this. But the point is, you're completely wrong about this. Let's say that the star starts out at a distance of X light.
No, Deviant. They may only be thinking two-dimensionally, because if you think about it, the pyramids are effectively just multiple triangles. Well, okay, 4 triangles, and then the base forms a square. And technically, they're shaped a little funky. And we're not going to get into that. I do love the beautiful, kink that the Great Pyramid has. I think it was the Great Pyramid that has it. One of them has a notice. And it's not the Bent Pyramid either. But I think the Great Pyramid, some of them have a noticeable, like a very subtle but still noticeable, like shift in them ever so slightly. That's just really pretty. That's just me.
Hours away. So that Adam and Eve can see it on the first day. Say it starts out 2 light hours away, and
stars receding at millions of times the speed of light. Yeah, that's basically one of the hypotheticals Kent is proposing here. Super chat from Braden, $6.99 Canadian. This super chat is on behalf of Probiotic. Oh, thank you so very much. Oh, y'all are just the best. God, y'all got me doing that voice. It's rare to ever hear me pull out that voice. That's super genuine, Oh, you touch my heart voice. A bad word is subject to YouTube's weird censorship rules. Yeah. But yeah, let's continue.
And the light reaches Earth within 2 hours, and then God does this stretchy thing for whatever reason. The light that you're going to see.
God should have probably stretched before he put in all that work making the planets in the universe and stuff. If he's stretching, 3 days into his job, he didn't do his warm-up stretches the right way. What is he, some kind of idiot? Harlan?
Corresponds to a star that's 2 light hours away. You're not going to see light that corresponds.
Okay, now we got a super chat that did come come through from our friend Experiments in Prebiotic Chemistry, $10. Someone needs to drill this point home. You can't use philosophy to prove the existence of God. Just because you can imagine something in your head doesn't make it real. Bingo. Exact. 100%. It is so ridiculous how that's part of why I don't want to do like call in stuff and do the debate thing, because people inevitably get to some kind of philosophy on this stuff that when they run out of science or run out of, when it comes down to put up or shut up, they branch out into some kind of philosophy argument. And I just cannot do that crap. And I'm not saying I can't do it as in I can't discuss philosophy. No, I mean, I don't want to fucking bother with it because it bores me and it gets nowhere. It's literally, wow, you can really, really think about stuff. That's great. It doesn't prove anything, so shut up. Thankfully, Kent doesn't do that too often, but he still does it, as we've seen here a bit.
Corresponds to a star that's 13.8 billion light years away.
Initially, as it recedes, the light would go with it and change.
Okay, as it's receding, if it's receding faster than the speed of light, which is necessary in order to achieve this kind of distance, it's going to be redshifted into oblivion, and you're not going to see it.
There's the phrase, redshifted into oblivion. Swear, I almost want to make some indie little shooter game and have that be like an ultimate weapon in it. And when you get a kill with somebody, like the just some sort of quantum gun, and just be like, Player X was redshifted into oblivion. I just love that. I mean, I could just mod it like Quake or something. I don't know. I used to do a lot more of this kind of crazy stuff. Not so much anymore now because I'm usually too damn tired. And all my equipment is sitting in storage. Let's continue.
So, did you say if it's receding at faster than the speed of light?
According to your model, if it's receding, this thing must be receding faster than the speed of light.
I don't know what speed it was receding at. All I know is it says clearly God stretched out the heavens.
Now, Kent, hold on a second. If these stars were able to be seen by Adam and Eve on the first day 6,000 years ago, or on this sixth day 6,000 years ago, and then God stretched out the universe so that the same star, which was within, it was at the very largest distance, it must have been 6 light days away, right? Whichever day he created the stars, I forget which day was it?
The fourth day.
All right, so 2 light days away then, right? Between days 2 and 6, between days light 4 and 6,
right.
There's 2 days. So at the very greatest, those stars have to start out 2 light days away in order for the light to reach the Earth, in order for Adam and Eve to be able to see them. Then God stretches out the universe, and those same stars are now 13.8 billion light years away, supposedly the farthest ones. The speed with which they have to recede is many, many orders of magnitude greater than the speed of light. And for that reason, they have to be invisible.
We could spend all day talking about the calculation of how you get this 13.7 billion.
And he just gives up right here. It's beautiful. Kent had no idea what he was walking to with this. And the fact that, again, this is back before he became a bitter old man. He was just a stupid old man. He walked into this 2 more times. We've got 2 more of these to go through in the near future. Love it.
If you'd like. Would you agree that number down for the last 100 years has shifted all over the scale? I have textbooks that show it at 20 billion.
Kent, science refines itself. It works and strives to be more and more accurate in its understanding. If you're looking at older publications, you're going to see the older values before we refine things. It's really that simple. But you can't understand that because you're obsessed with some old book that says a thing. Ironically, a version of the book from 1611 that was specifically written to refine it in a way from other translations that were deemed less accurate, or so the story goes. I don't really care. It's all bullshit.
I have textbooks that show the universe is 156 billion light years across.
Are you familiar with the concept of an error bar?
An error bar?
Yeah.
I'm in several different applications. What do you...
An error bar? Oh, yeah, several times. Yeah, I've totally heard of that. Hey, dude, you ever hear about this band, Geflagaflagen? They're the best thing ever. Yeah, I've totally heard of Geflaggelfagen. No, you haven't, because I just made it up. I mean, it's not the same thing, but that's the kind of thing Kent's doing. It's like, yeah, I totally know what an error bar is.
You referring to it in?
Well, when I'm talking about error bars, I'm talking about in data analysis. You have a point on a graph.
That is a great analogy, Braden. Last year you said you were 25. Now you claim you're 26. Why do you keep changing your answer? That's a good one right there, definitely.
Yeah, plus or minus. Right.
Yeah, plus or minus.
Sure.
So in all of these cases, or the overwhelming majority of them, there were a few mistakes. In the beginning, Hubble did famously make a mistake with regard to Andromeda, but wherever the same calculations were applied as they are today, you have these big error bars because the instrumentation back then wasn't as good as it is today. Those error bars encompass the current data points. And those error bars over the years became smaller and smaller and smaller. You said back in 1989, for instance, the textbooks were saying that it was 20 billion light years. And then it was something like plus or minus 10. And right now we're at 13.8 billion light years, and it's plus or minus a much smaller error bar.
Yeah, 16 hours and 6 seconds or something like that, right? Okay.
I don't remember the exact amount, but the point is.
And there we have another fine example of Hovind being petty.
As time goes on, our measurements become better and better, and the error bars become smaller and smaller. So what you're seeing here isn't something jumping all over the place. We're zeroing in on the correct figure.
Okay, what is the width of the universe? What is the diameter of the observable universe?
I don't know, Kent, but it's not as big as your mom. Oh, got him.
The observable universe, that would just be the Hubble distance. It would be, well, actually, it depends on the type of universe we're living in. If we're living in a flat universe, then it's going to be exactly 13.8 billion light years radius. If we're living in an open universe, which it appears we're in a slightly open one, then it could be bigger. If it's a closed universe, which it looks like it's not, then it could be slightly smaller. So it depends. Again, you have to look at the Friedman equations, you have to do the derivations, and you have to look at the experimental data and see which one most closely matches.
I have an article from space.com. It's from 2006. They locked me up for 9 years, so I can't update all 7,000 of my...
I can't update all 7,000 of my slides. Oh, Kent. Kent. No one cares about your fucking slides, all right? And just... It's always got to bring up that they locked me up for 9 years. No, Kent, you locked yourself up by committing the crime under the same logic by which people send themselves to hell under the judgment of your deity, by that same logic. The difference is the judicial system is actually real, and you were found guilty of the crime, so in a way, one can actually say, yes, you did send yourself to jail. Because the interesting thing is, had you worked with the feds on that and been cooperative, charges wouldn't have been nearly as severe. But, you know, I've just listened to what actual lawyers have had to say on the subject. What do they know, right?
My slides rapidly as I'd like, but they're saying the universe.
So, Braden, this is actually something I was going to bring up, is that the concept of a flat, open, or closed universe is a descriptor for the nature of how the expansion rate. If you graph it out, closed means the expansion rate decreases. Flat means that it stays level. You would have just a 45-degree angle on the graph between time and distance. And open implies that the acceleration rate accelerates as say that 5 times fast, as time progresses. And evidence points towards us being in a slightly open universe. Again, not 100%, could be mistaken, probably be corrected here by KC. But it gets into a simple way to describe possibilities in that particular aspect of physics. Look it up on Wikipedia. That explains it better than my rambling ass ever could.
Universe is 156 billion light years wide. It says the new finding implies the universe is instead about 15.8 billion years old, and about 180 billion light years wide.
Okay, is this a popular media outlet? Because these matters.
Space.com.
That's a media outlet. It's a science popularizer. These matters are not decided in the media. The media, I could point you to articles every week. I go on to Yahoo News and I see a new thing about how all of physics has been overturned by this new discovery.
Right. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
even in the science journals, they get overturned quite frequently, and you can't even always count on that. And go back and read one.
And you're not talking at all about science journals. You're talking about pop sci magazines and stuff. You don't even know what a scientific journal is, Kent.
50 years ago, and you'll see some amazing changes from today.
Well, of course, but it depends on what field we're talking about. If we're talking about something like electromagnetism, we're not seeing huge changes over the past 50 years. Maybe some developments in optics, but for the most, and quantum electrodynamics, of course. But other than that, Maxwell's equations are not changing over the past 50 years. Quantum field theory, on the other hand, is. So it varies from field to field. You can't make a sweeping generalization based on this. And cosmology is a relatively new field. It's only modern cosmology, like I said, was 1929. So we're less than 100 years in, and they've done a great job.
Hey there, Justin. As far as Hannah and Jake versus Kent, soonish, definitely soonish. I may break up the King Crocoduck ones with that one, but keep reminding me because sometimes I forget that one happened. Definitely a fun one to go back to.
The predictions are great. The models have failed to be falsified. Big Bang cosmology has it.
Sure, and I love cosmology. I love the study of the stars.
You don't love a damn thing except yourself, Kent, and you know fuck all about cosmology. That's always another cop-out he does. He just goes, oh, well, yeah, I love such and such. No, you don't, Kent.
Love that kind of stuff. I think the assumption, the conclusion is wrong, but I'm not against the study or the scientific aspect. This article you mentioned is from space.com is researching, a research team led by Alceste Bonanos at the Carnegie Institute of Washington has found, a galaxy M33 is a 15% further away from our Milky Way galaxy than previously calculated. Currently, most astronomers agree the value of the Hubble constant is about 71 kilometers per second, per megapark second. If this were smaller, Anyway, the article says the universe is 156 billion light years away. It was 156 billion light years across, and it's now, with this new 15% difference, 180 billion light years wide. So if the Carnegie Institute in Washington is claiming the observable universe is 180 billion light years wide.
Wait, observable or the universe? Are they using the word observable?
Let's see. They're saying, no, they don't use the word observable.
Another case where nuance matters. Kent had to go back and correct himself because it's impossible for us to have an observable universe further than the time of the universe's existence because it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's in the nature of the light year. But the physical distances, that's an interesting one, which has been brought up to Kent before. This is the most famous case where it's been brought up to him, and he literally cannot wrap his head around it in any capacity. He has negative understanding of the principles of cosmic inflation and the math and evidence that, again, show without a doubt that it is a phenomena. That effectively, you could call it the generation of empty space in the voids of the universe can actually be generated and create space at a rate faster than c. Because this empty space is massless. That can happen. It's totally wild to think about, but the math works. Fucking wild.
Okay, it's a different story then, because in principle...
Same with biology. Observable is cows make cows, okay? That's observable. Okay, nothing else.
No. When we're talking about the observable universe, we're talking about things that are within the cosmic horizon. So let's say we're looking at a star that appears to us to be 13.8 billion light years away. It took 13.8 billion years for the light to reach us, but in that time, the star has receded past the cosmic horizon, and we're not seeing it as it is right now, and we can't see it as it is.
And when we were bringing up the whole flat, open, closed universe thing, the end result of an open universe is that eventually we're not going to be able to see effectively anything around us. Everything will have expanded to a point where it's too far away, and the light will have stopped reaching us, because at that point the stuff will be too far out. It's pretty wild thought, but it looks like that's the way we're headed. Universe is freaking terrifying, but it was made specifically for us, and black holes, and radiation, and hydrogen, and plasma, and random rocks everywhere, but mostly just nothingness, which really isn't nothingness, but I'm not even going to get into virtual particles. Some people's minds are already blown by KC's stuff. I don't want to add a bit of salt onto the already mind-blown wound with other weird concepts. Virtual particles are a pretty awesome thought.
Is right now. There is going to come a point where the star will simply disappear, because at that point it's going to be redshifted into oblivion. It's outside of the cosmic horizon, so the recessional velocity relative to us is greater than the speed of light. We're not going to see it. Things outside of this horizon are outside of the observable universe, but they're still part of the universe. And you can see things that are currently outside of the observable universe, but you're not seeing them as they are right now. You're seeing them as they were many eons ago.
Or seeing them as they were 6,000 years ago.
I'm telling you, Kent, that you can't do that. In order to do that, you have to make it go faster than the speed of light. We would not be able to see it.
Well, if indeed this article from the Carnegie Institute is correct, and it's 180 billion light years wide, that's 11 times faster than the speed of light for the star to get there.
Okay, but right now, where it's going, where it's at right now is different from where we're seeing it at. Like I said, you could be looking at something that's 10 billion light years away, and the light has taken 10 billion years to reach us. But as it is right now, in order to be able to see it as it is right now, you have to wait 10 billion years and wait for the light coming out of it right now to reach us. But by that time, it's already past the cosmic horizon. By that time, it's already way over past the cosmic horizon where you're saying it's at. And yes, we would not be able to see it as it is right now. But when we're looking at it right now, we're not seeing it as it is right now. We're seeing it as it was 10 billion light years ago.
I understand all of that. But if the universe...
You understand none of that, Kent. So pathetic. So transparent.
Is indeed 180 billion light years across, as this article says, that's 11 times faster than the speed of light to get there from here or from anywhere.
Yeah, it's outside of our cosmic horizon. Everything outside of the cosmic horizon is going to be receding faster than the speed of light. Faster
than the speed of light. Yeah. If I got your quote right on this. Everything outside of our cosmic horizon.
So, y'all know my speed of light rant earlier. So, everything is, from our apparent perspective, moving faster than the value of c, to be accurate to this.
Horizon is receding faster than the speed of light. That's
yeah. Yeah, though I should argue that it's not the object themselves that's moving, it's the space in between that's moving faster than the speed of light, which is fine.
And this is the point where Kent Hovind defecated many, many bricks.
Is the speed of light constant in all times, all through space? You're just got done saying the speed of light is faster outside of our horizon. Could it
That's not what I said, Kent. That is not what I said. I said that the recessional velocity is faster.
There's another good thing Casey does here that Kent tries to stop people from doing is cutting them off right from the get-go when he tries to straw man. Although at this stage, I don't even think Kent is actually trying to straw man. I think he's just so incompetent he can't understand what's actually being said.
Faster than the speed of light. I did not say the light is moving faster than the speed of light.
Okay, so the object, the mass, the actual...
No. Again, it's not the object that's moving faster than the speed.
Yeah, the expansion is, that's the key word. That is the key word.
Of light, it's the space between the objects that's moving faster than the speed of light.
So is the star moving then?
The star itself is probably orbiting around another star.
I mean, this is where relativity comes into play, in that the only way you can measure the frame of movement is from some kind of inertial reference frame. And so, the star's perspective, it's not moving, it's just hanging out. From another perspective, one could say it would effectively be moving at that rate, but again, we're only going to see the light from it at that rate. So it works. It's counterintuitive even when you understand this stuff to some degree, but it works.
Maybe it's pulling on the other planets, and the planets are pulling on it. In that sense, it's moving. But the stars and the galaxies are not shooting away from us. We're not all shooting away from each other. It's the space between us that's expanding.
And how is this happening? Where's this energy coming from? And what evidence is there for this?
This is basically Hubble's law. This is what the entire theory is saying. The alternative would have to be that we are at the center of the universe, and apparently we smell really bad or something, because that means all the galaxies are running away from us by some mechanism that contradicts everything we know about gravity and so on.
Okay.
But in reality, we have space that's expanding faster than the speed of light, and Einstein's equations are completely fine with that.
If the space,
I mean, this is funny stuff where, just like the laws of thermodynamics, Kent would probably be like, well, Einstein's equations prohibit that. It's like, those equations are how we realize this. They're the math that made us think, hey, wait, this actually is a thing. It's just fucking wild when they try to use science to disprove science. It's like, that's how it works for scientists, but not for you. Just
between
just making shit up.
The object is expanding, then the object is getting further away from each other. If you and I were standing in a room 10 feet apart and the space between us expanded, we would move.
Not necessarily. The space between us
Can't, because space is not what you think it is.
Is moving. The space between us is moving. In the classical sense, we would not be moving away from each other. Relativistically, relativity is a very different animal than classical mechanics.
You're trying to say the stars are 13.8 billion light years away. Therefore, it took 13.8 billion years. Maybe they're 2 minutes old, and the space between them expanded to 13.8 billion years, and it did it.
In that case, you wouldn't be able to see them.
Well, maybe there's a lot of them we can't see.
No, but you would not be able to see them right now. The star that supposedly was 2 minutes away from us and then suddenly shot away, we should be able to see the star that's 2 light minutes or light years away from us. And then when it shoots away from us, it should become invisible, because at that point it's moving faster than the speed of light in order to be able to reach those distances in that amount of time.
So if an object is moving faster than the speed of light, the light from that object will never reach us. Is that your observation?
Yeah, if it's outside of, that's what it means for it to be outside of the cosmic horizon. The recessional velocity, the space between us is expanding faster than the speed of light, and the light coming from them is not able to compensate for this expansion of space. It's never going to reach us. It's redshifted into oblivion, which is what I mean by that.
Where is this energy coming from to expand space between them?
Beats me.
I'm sure it does. This is purely theoretical, hypothetical. Is this absurd?
No, we were able to make all kinds of predictions with it.
You can observe space between two objects expanding, which I would assume would take a whole lot of energy. I mean, I can't think.
I mean, when you measure redshifts, you get a resulting value that show that the light is being redshifted past those kinds of velocity equivalencies. So yeah. Again, the math works, Kent. I mean, I feel like if I ever debate this man, which is never going to happen, but if I was to, every response I would have would just be, the math works. You lack understanding of nuance, something in that nature, just constantly.
Think of anything else. And how do you do this without the mass moving? You have mass accelerated beyond the speed of light. The star is made out of material. Do you agree with that? There's some kind of mass to a star.
Yes, but it's not the mass itself that it's accelerating. It's the space between the masses that's moving.
Does anybody on planet Earth understand that, or is this just...
Obviously, a lot of people do. The fact that you can't understand it, Kent, shows how pathetic you are. And I only say that in relation to how much you brag about having taught math and calculus and understanding science, because you obviously don't understand shit.
Just words that you're speaking here.
Intuitively, nobody understands it. We're talking about relativity here. When you're talking about modern physics, when you're talking about relativity and quantum mechanics and particle physics,
his faith gene's the one that gives him the obsession with the 15-foot whale penis. Hovind.
There's no way of
whale penis gives glory to God.
Intuitively grasping these matters. Even now, we're talking to you about this in ordinary language. I'm only conveying to you a very superficial picture. We have to be talking about non-Euclidean tensors. We have to be dealing with differential equations.
Non-Euclidean tensors. Let alone the differential equations he brought up, where I'm just like, nope, not going near it. But non-Euclidean tensors. You gotta chill out in the back rooms with Cthulhu to understand this stuff. That's how wild it is. And I love this stuff. I wish I could understand the math better. I wish so desperately that there had been a different course for just the way, I don't want to say the way life would go, but just, I may have had the opportunity and been of the kind of person to successfully get into this stuff, because it's so awesome. So awesome. And yet, I'm not equipped to understand 95% of it. I have to have it abstracted and trust the scientist on it. Just like I trust them with so many other things and am generally never let down. Except that one time. You all know what I'm talking about. No, not that.
In the case of particle physics, we have to be dealing with group theory. But at that point, it's going to sound to most audiences like gibberish.
Like the idea that the space between them is
seriously, if there is any kind of God out there, it's math. That's it. That's the only God there is. Math. Once you break it down into the math, everything becomes it's a cruel mistress.
Expanding, but they are not moving.
They could be. They could be moving. I'm sure they are moving. They're just not moving in the same way. So
faster than the speed of light. Hello.
They themselves are not moving faster than the speed of light. It's the space between them that's moving. There's a difference.
I don't think anybody in the world is going to see the difference here. Okay, if the space between me,
well, they need to learn relativity. I don't know what to tell you, Kent. General relativity is probably one of the most firmly grounded theories that has ever been developed. It has yet to be falsified. It has yet to come out with a bad prediction. Like I said, it's been predicting things 100 years on.
Let us remember that at the moment Kent was doing this very debate, quote unquote, he is using principles of general relativity as an aspect of this that are required for all this to work. Our understanding of relativity is explicit in the entire internet connection that made this possible working, the devices that made this happen working. It's absolutely incredible. And he just takes it for granted. Shit like that's why I say this man doesn't even understand electricity, like even to a rudimentary degree, because he knows so little. He doesn't even have a clue what he doesn't know. It's Dunning-Kruger on another level when it comes to this kind of stuff.
If you don't like general relativity, tell you what, Kent, you learn differential geometry, you learn tensor calculus, you go ahead, you look at general relativity, you find...
This is true, Sydney, and I'm glad you bring it up because, yeah, I didn't notice it until you brought it up that, yeah, him saying it's moving does create a problem with the argument. The expansion line would have been better.
Find the problems with it, and then you go and collect your Nobel Prize.
And I want to think he corrects himself in the later discussions, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
If you think you can take down Einstein, go for it, man. But I'm just telling you, this is the current state of scientific.
That space expands without the mass moving has been taught for 100 years, and Einstein said it. Therefore, it's got to be true, and nobody's taken it down. That doesn't prove it's right. Doesn't prove anybody even. You don't even understand it. How can
Yes, I do. I've studied.
Kent missing the entire point of everything Casey said there. It's like, oh, they just say it. Einstein just said it, so it must be true. It's like, no, we've done predictions with it. We've worked with it. We use those principles and get valid results. He doesn't. This is the quintessential demonstration of Kent not understanding science at all. Because if he did, he would not say such idiocy.
Studied this.
Okay, then explain to me how the stars move. How can the space between them expand?
I am so glad you're enjoying this and sticking around. I'm actually having a really good time. I didn't even realize it had been 2 hours. Now it's at 2.5 hours. I didn't realize it had been 2 hours until I looked and was like, oh, dang, it's like 7 something. I've been doing yet 2 hours. I'm just kind of energetic right now and having a really good time. As I yawn after that. But yeah, thank you for being here. It means a lot to me.
And it not move the mass of the star. Where is this energy coming from to expand the space?
Okay, the energy itself, we know very little.
And I'm self-conscious about this, so I do want to add the qualifier. If it sounds like I'm, being apathetic when I finish up saying something like, I'm glad to have you here or something, it's not intentional. I do have some slight speech quirks and sometimes don't end sentences with the proper inflection. So if it sounds sarcastic, I promise it's not. Seriously, y'all are awesome. I'm just very self-conscious about that, so I just wanted to make sure. Got a few new people here, so, let everybody know. I'm just weird.
Little about. We just give it this name, dark energy. We say it's a negative pressure gradient, and that's basically all we know about it right now. This is at the frontier. This is at the frontier of modern physics.
So a negative pressure gradient.
That's all we can say about it right now.
Explosion. I think we use negative pressure gradients on Afghanistan and Iraq and all those places when we drop a bomb.
Oh, Kent. First off, those are overpressure situations with a compression wave that is moving faster than the speed of sound as opposed to slower than. And also, that's pretty tasteless to bring up. But people like you will do such, and you think it's funny. War is funny, guys. Hovind thinks blowing up people in the desert's funny. Yeah.
Bomb creates a vacuum as it expands out. I understand. Okay.
What?
Well,
yeah, see, even KC was like, what? And I know what he's referring to. I forget the exact name. I'm not wanting to get into it here. But, sorry. It's a terribly delivered joke, Kent. Not that all your jokes aren't terribly delivered.
Any explosion.
It's not an explosion. It's a constant. Well, not really constant. It's a parameter given by an uppercase lambda. Actually, Einstein was the first person to come up with this idea of a.
Oh God, this is glorious. From Sydney Raptor, Einstein's response to anything Kent said to him would be, "Sorry, I didn't understand that, but you could start by emptying that bin over there." Bravo. And yes, Braden, you are correct. Kent is falling back on the, well, you don't know every single detail, so you're wrong tactic.
Cosmological constant of a dark energy. He put it into his equations for general relativity as a sort of fudge factor in order to correct what he thought was a stupid thing. He thought it was stupid initially for the universe to be expanding. He thought the universe should be a steady state, so he put this extra term in to keep things expanding to counteract the gravity that was pulling things in, keep everything steady, put everything in equilibrium. But then later on, Hubble, just discovered the redshift, and Einstein was like, "No, this was my biggest blunder. I should not have put that term in because I could have predicted the expansion of the universe." But then it turned out, when people started studying supernovae and they began studying other things and looking more closely at the Friedmann equation and the results of COBE and WMAP and so on, that the universe is actually accelerating. It's not slowing down as people thought it would be. So this thing, dark energy, it's like a 10-year-old idea at this point, 10, 20 years old. People have been looking into it, and it's very young. There's a lot to be learned, but we don't know much about it at this point. That's the honest answer, and yeah.
Okay, Santa Claus and Easter Bunny are much older ideas than that, okay?
What's your point, Kent?
Fairy tale, okay?
What's your point?
Dark energy. Now, think what you're doing. You're saying I'm not saying it, but said it, you're implying clearly the Bible is wrong. The earth cannot be 6,000 years old because of an unknown force called dark energy, which expands things, and nobody knows where this comes from or how it works, but everybody better quit reading their Bible.
It's not because of dark energy. Dark energy is just the name that we give to whatever is causing this acceleration.
It's not observable.
Well, the reason the creation myth is wrong to say that the universe is 6,000 years old is at least in part because of Hubble's law, because we're able to derive the age of the universe using this principle of recessional velocities and the relationship to the galaxies.
That is not, you're not able to derive the age of the universe. You're able to derive the distance.
No, you can derive the age. It's a very easy equation. 1 divided by the Hubble constant. You can do it yourself right now if you want.
You're back to completely missing the point. The star.
Kent won't do math. Claims person's missing point to avoid having to do math. You're funny, Kent. Funny, I mean stupid.
A light year is a distance. It is not a time.
Did you hear that, Kent? That was me face palming. I mean, how many times?
Do it a couple more times, please. Okay.
How many times, Kent? Let's try this again. Let's imagine a racetrack that is a light year long.
Thank you, Deviant. I appreciate that. And now I want some pancakes myself because I'm a little hungry. I've been snacking over here, but didn't have any kind of proper dinner. I'll just eat in the morning. Yawn. Don't play a drinking game of how many times I yawn during a stream. You will eventually become slightly inebriated.
Okay. Light is traveling at the speed of light down this racetrack.
Okay.
It is a light year long. How long does it take for it to get from the beginning to the end?
1 year.
There we go. Okay, let's say the track is 2 light years long. How long is it going to take for light to get from one end to the other?
2 years, if it goes at.
Let's say it's 20 light years long. How long will it take?
Yeah, we can pick every number in the solar system if you'd like. Go through this as far as you want to count. I understand, but you're missing the point. If a light year.
But you're missing the point. You're missing the point, Kent.
Is a distance about 6 trillion miles, is rounded off to that. So suppose somebody was a light year away and they fired a bullet at us at 10 times the speed of light. How long would it take the bullet to get here?
The bullet is flying at 10 times the speed of light?
It would take 1/10 of C, or 18,000 years to get here, or something like that.
If that was physically possible, fine. Whatever.
18,000 years to get to Kent. Ignoring the fact that the bullet has mass, Kent. Let's take your typical 9mm Parabellum / 9mm Luger cartridge. And the average bullet weight that's common in the US, let's just go with 124 grain. That mass prevents the bullet from going at the value of C because you would need infinite energy to accelerate it to that point. And even getting relatively close, no pun intended, to C would take inordinate amounts of energy. But that's just me being petty, pointing out that on a whim, while sleep deprived, well, not sleep deprived, but while tired, just on a whim deciding to tackle it, I can still be more coherent and more scientifically accurate, better understanding of this stuff than Kent Hovind. Just full stop. I'm not saying this is my jam. This is kind of my jam.
Whatever.
Awesome. You're saying space between the stars is expanding. That's not physically possible.
Yes, it is. Space doesn't have mass.
But the star has to be moving. The star ends up further away than it started. You got 2 stars X distance apart. The space between them expands. They are now further apart. Think about it.
Yes, I understand that. We're talking about relativity at this point. It's different from Newtonian physics.
Where's the scientific evidence? And the bigger point you're totally missing is none of this matters when it comes to evolution, because you're only getting over the first hurdle of trying to get billions of years to rescue a dumb theory.
I already told you, Ken, it's completely irrelevant. Even if we didn't know anything about evolutionary theory, this would still be a thing.
Okay, I don't think you've proven that the universe is billions of years old. I think we probably agree the stars may be 13.87295 billion light years and 20 seconds away.
Okay, now let's imagine a racetrack going from those stars to us. How much time will it take the light to reach us from the beginning of that racetrack to the finish line where we're at?
from where the star is right now at 13.8 billion light years away, it'll take 13.8 billion years for the light to get here.
Very good.
I got it, but you don't get it. How long did it take the star to get from here to there? What if the star was leaving us at 80% C?
Can't happen. It can't happen. If it did happen, Kent, then it would mean that it was moving at faster than the speed of light at that point, and we would not be able to see it right now.
The star is moving at half the speed of light, for the sake of an example, and
It's not going to get to that distance in time.
Do you agree a car can blow its horn and drive away from you, and you can still?
There's only one thing that blows here, Kent, and that's you, in more ways than you can imagine. Wait, that sounded like I know something. We're just moving on from that.
Still hear the horn as long as the
Yes.
car stays under the speed of sound.
As long as it's under the speed of... Yeah,
You could still hear the horn blowing.
sure.
Now it would drop the pitch, just like the Doppler effect. If any weight of the train track, you hear the as it goes by, the pitch drop. That's a simple Doppler effect.
And he had to pantomime it like a child. That's always something I find as a definitive sign of someone with a child's intellect, is in serious stuff, that urge to pantomime things just in that way. Not as if it's explicitly like, here, let me demonstrate this, but to just do it. So juvenile.
We assume this happens with light also, which is why the redshift theory comes into play. But the star could be 13.8 billion light years away and still be 6,000 years old. I don't see how you can't see
We
it.
would not be able to see it, Kent. We would not be able to see
I
it.
know, go out at night. Come here to Alabama. You can see the stars like crazy around here.
You would not be able to see it. If this expansion had taken place, that means that the star was moving faster than the speed of light by a factor of a zillion.
Okay, suppose there is a dark matter that is indeed expanding the space between the stars.
You mean dark energy?
Or dark energy. Well, it comes from dark matter, I thought was the assumption.
No. The two are completely unrelated. They have nothing to do with each other.
Suppose there is a dark energy that's expanding the space between the stars, and this has been going on for 6,000 years, and they now are 13.8 billion light years away. Just the space between them expanded. Bible is still true.
But we would not be able to see them. If it had expanded, okay, we're saying that the star was 2 light days away from Earth at its starting point, at the very farthest away. And Adam and Eve saw them 2 light days away. And then God suddenly stretched them way out, and he's stretching them out faster than the speed of light. The moment God starts stretching them out faster than the speed of light, that's it. They become invisible. They leave our cosmic horizon. We don't see them.
Okay, we have gone an hour and a half as what we scheduled for the debate. This is wonderful. We can do this every day if you'd like. Your first point about...
And Kent pulling his time card. This has gone on long enough. I'm an old man. I got to go to sleep so I can wake up in the morning, take my 2-minute showers, and then whip everybody and make them do my bidding. Hovind, got to build my theme park.
the age of...
We can make that happen.
Yeah, the age of the universe and the Big Bang. I think we could ask the audience to vote if you'd like. I don't think you have proven it is billions of light years old. You have demonstrated that you believe this, and the indicator of the speed of light. I think there are other ways to interpret it. John Coffey did not murder those 2 girls.
There are no ways of interpreting it where you can maintain the laws of physics. In order to interpret it the way you're interpreting it, you have to believe that it's possible for something to be moving faster than the speed of light and yet not leave our cosmic horizon. And you have to invoke this supernatural nonsense, as opposed to just looking at what we're observing. You're shoehorning God, and you're making the model less parsimonious because you really want to save this God is stretching out the heavens thing. Maybe he did. I don't know. But the evidence doesn't say so.
Casey, you are the one who is violating the laws of physics with your expanding space between 2 massive objects.
No, that's just relativity.
You have the mass moving it fast.
I love how Kent just thinks he can just tell the physicists that they're wrong. This is the quintessential problem with him, that he thinks he knows better than the actual fucking scientists. And as we all know, he doesn't. He knows less than the average layperson does about some of this stuff. It's incredible.
Faster than the speed of light. Somewhere along the line.
No, you don't. You do not. It's not
Okay, I mean, maybe not so much this stuff, but still.
the mass that's moving faster than the speed of light. It's the space.
So does the mass move? Does the star end up further away when this mass is done expanding?
Okay, I want you to imagine. I'm going to explain right now. Imagine a coordinate system. Imagine a grid. Yeah, and we're going to draw this grid on a balloon.
Okay.
Now we're going to draw 2 points on this grid.
I understand. I taught physics myself, but see, this
and
is.
Then hold on. We're going to
just doing that. Oh, I understand this. I taught physics myself, but see, no, Kent. Let people make their fucking points. Their actual points that they actually have, that actually say something, and not the bullshit you say. Gay, Kent. Gay.
start blowing this balloon up.
I know you're
Now, hold on. These points are still at the relative locations on the grid. They're not moving with respect to the grid itself, but the grid is expanding. And so the points are moving away from each other, and the speed at which they move away from each other is increasing as the balloon gets bigger and bigger. So the points themselves are not actually moving faster than whatever speed with respect to the grid. The grid itself is what's moving. That's the distinction that you're not getting.
Oh, I don't believe you. I understand that completely, but you're not getting it. This grid is on a two-dimensional surface, a flat surface, relatively flat, the surface of the balloon. It's expanding into three-dimensional space, and the points on the balloon are moving. Measure them.
They're not moving with respect to the surface. That's the point.
But are you saying the universe is flat and is a surface and is expanding, or if it's already starting off 3D? How are they moving? Into what? Into 4D or 5D? Where are they moving into? Your balloon is moving from 2D to 3D, which.
And here we have Kent's lack of comprehension on how the very nature of space goes. I mean, we already had that demonstrated, but this is just another extreme case where he doesn't understand the nuances of, excuse me again, actual real space.
Which is why the analogy collapses. But the points on the balloon, you could measure them at an inch apart. Below the balloon up, they're now 4 inches apart. The dots moved.
But the points with respect to the grid have not moved. You need to understand what's not allowed is on the grid, the point cannot move from one point on the grid to the other, regardless of whether the balloon is blown up or flaccid. The dots cannot move, say,
he said flaccid,
more than 3 grids per second. That's the constraint. That's our analogy to the speed of light. But if the dots are completely still and the grid is expanding, then they are moving away from each other relativistically. They could be potentially moving away from each
Sydney, that's a great idea, honestly.
other faster than they would be if the dots themselves were traveling more than 3 grids per second. But the dots themselves are not actually moving. That's allowed. What's not allowed, again, is for the dots to be moving.
No, I did get your super chat or just your message earlier. Yeah, and I do appreciate you for being here. Sorry that you're having computer issues. That just plain sucks. I'm glad I'm not afflicted by too many of those at the moment. Everyone just keep good thoughts that continues to be the case, and that everyone else's computer problems and other problems get better. Hopefully.
More than 3 grids per second.
You understand your balloon surface is two-dimensional for relative speaking purposes here.
What's your point?
3D. Where's this universe expanding into? It's already 3D.
Kent can't think of 4 dimensions.
Dimensional.
Man sure would have a hard time understanding string theory.
Well, could be more dimensions.
Okay, but you see, you're making this stuff up. This isn't science. This is religion. This is fairy tale stuff, and it may be true.
This is just interpretation of the observation.
The observation
it's an inductive inference. This is how science works. And it has accurately predicted all kinds of things. We have accurately predicted the distribution of the elements, and helium in particular. We have accurately predicted the oldest ages of the stars and the error bars that they should fall within. We have accurately predicted all sorts of things. I could pull up a whole list. I mean, the Big Bang Theory is one of the best vindicated theories in the whole of science.
Well, I think the Bible accurately predicted in the last days there would be scoffers who would be willing.
And here we go with this crap. Magic book full of bullshit says people won't believe magic book full of bullshit. Film at 11.
Ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment.
No. Hold on, Kent. Are you telling me that a book full of supernatural and outrageous things said that people would be skeptical and scoffing it?
I forgot he pulled the same thing here. Maybe this is where I got the idea from subliminally. I don't know.
The Bible
Really?
talks about you, but hey, I'm here to rescue you. I'm here to help you get ready for that judgment day.
Man, I'm good. I'm good, man.
Okay.
What I'm here to do, I'm not here to do the religion thing. I'm here to do the science thing.
Me neither. I like science, and I'm not into religion. I'm into relationship. I know the God of the universe.
Oh, yes, playing there. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. No, Kent, it's a religion. You don't know shit personally, and you're not into science at all. If you were into science, you wouldn't say the inane shit you do day in, day out. You don't know shit about Jack.
Personally, he's my buddy. Hey, let's do this again. We'll
right.
get on to the secretary and schedule a time.
Sounds good.
And we'll talk about the 8. You want to stick on these same 5 points. I did not have an introductory speech written out like you did, so I'll see if I can get some stuff together. But,
Sure.
And you can go first again if you'd like. But
You can go first. It's all the same to me. Whatever you like, Kent.
well,
Thank you for joining us.
let's book them, and you keep studying. You keep
Book 'em, Dano.
climbing that mountain of truth. I'll wait for you at the top. Okay.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Guys, I want to thank both of you for joining us. I think this was actually very interesting. I know we had a lot.
Okay, I know it basically ends there. We've been going for just shy of 3 hours. I'm a little tired. There's a little bit of stuff I want to take care of before I go to sleep. I did just want to thank everyone for being here, as I always try to do. Y'all are absolutely awesome. Hey, if you come back, watch again, leave some comments down below. Do the whole YouTube thing. Like, if you aren't subscribed, may want to consider tapping that button. Share it with a friend if you think they'll get a laugh out of all this. I don't know. I don't understand why people find me funny, but apparently I'm funny. With that being said, much love to all of you. You all are awesome, as always. I'll catch everyone next time as I click the magic buttons to end the stream, and it takes a moment to do it. So